Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Grand Line. Heroic Spirit of the Straw Hat Pirates. Chapter 21. Buzz. A muffled sound. Luffy quickly retracted his hands and rushed straight towards him, hitting him hard. The powerful impact instantly caused Bucky's body to fly hundreds of meters into the sky. And this distance continues to expand. Wow, I will come back. Bucky shouted as he flew into the sky. The miserable appearance made all the crew members of the Bucky Pirates run towards the port. Luffy and Zoro were both unable to defeat them, and now that Rossi and Nami were back, they were even less confident in fighting. Ha, of course you have to come back. I will be troubled if you don't come back. The corner of Luochi's mouth raised, and he threw the treasure in his hand towards Luffy, who had recovered from the heroic spirit mimicry state due to a lot of physical exertion. Then he stepped on the moon steps and flew into the sky, rushing straight towards Bucky high in the sky. At his speed, it only took him less than a minute to catch up with Bucky. PFF'd, you guys actually caught up with me. Bucky's eyes widened and he looked at Rossi flying beside him in surprise. Haha, I'm here to help you fulfill your dream, Bucky. Didn't you just say that you hate your fruit ability? I will let you return to your previous state. Luochi chuckled lightly, and a weapon-colored domineering energy began to flow from his right arm like running water. Is this Liu Ying? You can actually use such a high-level weapon color. Do you want to kill me? Rossi didn't reply. He stepped on the air with his legs again and performed moonstep, and in a blink of an eye he was in front of Bucky. Fall down, Bucky. Luochi waved his fist, and the force was so strong that it even caused a sonic boom the moment he punched. Bucky's eyes widened, and his body kept its original movement trajectory as he watched Rosie's fist hit his face. Suddenly, just when Rosie's fist was about to fall on Bucky's face, Bucky's originally frightened expression disappeared instantly, a red light flashed in his eyes, and he narrowly avoided Rosie's attack. Ha, Luochi exclaimed, just now, did you use your strength to see and hear your domineering look? Rossi frowned, his eyes fixed on Bucky in front of him. You can't be wrong. To be able to dodge the punch I just made, this guy must have used the hockey of insight. Single quote. Good guy, have I traveled to a fake pirate world? Single quote. Or is it that Bucky in the original book has been hiding his strength and pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger? Is he actually very strong? Single quote. From just now, Rossi felt something was wrong with Bucky's performance. Although he suffered many attacks from Luffy, Bucky himself did not show any signs of injury. You know, the current Luffy is very different from the original Luffy. In the state of the mimic heroic spirit, Luffy's pure physical strength is much higher than before. Not to mention, what he just hit on Bucky was Alu's famous skill, Nail Fist. Humph, kid, I don't know what you want to do to me though. But I won't fall into trouble with a newcomer like you. I'll give you the victory this time. I will definitely come back to regain my position in the future. Bucky snorted, and his body began to collapse in front of Rosie's eyes. To be precise, it should be split. From the head, to the limbs, to the body. Bucky's entire body split into two, then into four, splitting into hundreds or thousands of pieces in the blink of an eye. In the end, it even split into a state that was invisible to the naked eye. Good guy, can you still do this? Luochi smacked his mouth and quickly used Moonstep to stay away from Bucky's split body. He didn't want to accidentally inject Bucky's body into his body. Not only can I see and hear colors, but my fruit abilities have been developed so well. Single quote. You really can't underestimate him. Single quote. Forget it, let's leave this torn fruit to him. Single quote. Luochi shook his head and quietly felt Bucky's body drifting away in the distance with the strong wind. Although devil fruit is precious, it is helpful for partners to strengthen their heroic spirit templates. But Bucky's strength in front of him is obviously not as weak as in the original work, and Rossi doesn't really intend to fight with a crew member of One Piece for the split fruit. Who knows how powerful Bucky is? After once again confirming that Bucky was far away, Luochi used Moonstep to move toward Luffy and others. But after Raza moved away, Bucky's body reconsolidated into its original shape. A dangerous person with a bounty of 800 million belly on his head is actually mixed up with the man chosen by Shanks. I don't know what Shanks will think after knowing this. Forget it, it's none of my business, I'd better leave quickly. Bucky muttered a few words and controlled his body to fall towards the other side of the town. How's it going? Did you succeed, Rosie? Hearing the sound of Rossi falling from the sky, Zoro looked away from Luffy and Nami, looked at Rossi and asked. I give up. That guy is a little weird. It's better not to take away his devil fruit. Think about it carefully. After all, that man is recognized as a brother by the four emperors Shanks. And Luffy knows Shanks. If he really takes away his devil fruit, we may not be able to justify it. Rossi shrugged and turned to look at Luffy and Nami. By the way, what are they arguing about, Zoro? Luffy wants to leave the treasure you got from the buggy pirates to the village chief of this town, but Nami wants to keep them, so they quarreled. Zoro said indifferently. Although he thought Luffy's behavior was a bit strange, since Luffy was the captain, he didn't want to comment too much. I see. Rossi nodded slightly, took the suitcase handed over by Zoro, and took out the earrings that sparkled with bright light from the clothes. Nami, I'll give you this pair of earrings. Luffy will decide about the berries. Earrings. Nami turned around, and when she saw the earrings in Lucci's hand, she immediately rushed over and held Rosie's hand tightly. She was afraid that Rosie would take the earrings back. Just by looking at the decorative gems on the earrings, Nami knew that their value was definitely not low. Hee, thank you Rosie, you are such a good person. Thank you, Nami, for giving me this good person card. Rosie smiled indifferently and put the earrings in Nami's hand. Sure enough, after getting these priceless earrings, she did not choose to wear them on her ears, but carefully put them away. Rosie, I want to keep these treasures, do you have any objections? At this time, Luffy also came over. After all, it was Rosie who found the treasure, and Rosie just took out his private property and gave it to Nami. Even Luffy would think of saying hello to Rosie. Just watch, Luffy, there aren't many berries there anyway. Thank you, Rosie, you're really a good guy. Yes, another good guy card. Rosie shrugged and turned to look at Zoro. What are you looking at me for? Zoro frowned. I want to see if you will also say that I'm a good guy. Hee, a pirate with a bounty of 800 million berries, he doesn't look like a good guy anyway. As expected of Zoro, I think so too. Compared to this, you are very free now, right, Vice Captain, do you want to fight with me? Fencing. Rosie glanced at Zoro, who was full of fighting spirit, and shook his head decisively. Forget it, I have to go to sea with our navigator to make some preparations. If you want to fight, you should go to Luffy. After that, Rosie took Nami's hand and quickly disappeared in front of Zoro. He didn't want to be targeted. If he really defeated Zoro with a sword, who knows how many times Zoro would challenge him in his future sailing life. The person Zoro needs to challenge should be Hawkeye. On the boundless sea, a small boat is sailing along the sea to the southeast. Under the scorching sun, the 4 passengers on the boat all felt a burst of heat. It's too hot, I want to drink water. Luffy stood up and reached out to pick up the barrel next to him and drink it. Stupid, we guess we just left Orange Town. If you really let you drink like this, we will be thirsty before we reach the next stop. Zoro hurriedly grabbed Luffy's arm to prevent him from doing something that is not conducive to sailing. Seeing this scene, Roche, the deputy captain, was also happy to be idle and let Zoro look after Luffy. Really, you can still laugh. As a vice captain, you didn't stop Luffy from leaving Barry in Orange Town. And as a vice captain, can't you think of a solution to the current situation? It's impossible for our pirate group to always sail on such a small boat, right? Nami pulled her collar and tried her best to let the cool breeze blow her body. Looking at Rosie in front of her, she still had some complaints on her face. Didn't you take my earrings? Those Barry left in Orange Town are not as expensive as the earrings I gave you. Rosie reached out and flicked Nami's forehead. After she showed a painful expression, he continued. Didn't we get the sea map of the surrounding area from Orange Town just now? Next, we just need to go to Zailuobu village. If there are no accidents, we can get a larger ship there. The ship Rosie mentioned is naturally the Mary. Although with Rosie's current financial resources, buying a ship is a very simple matter. But if the Straw Hat Pirates lost the Mary, Rossi always felt that something would be missing. Besides, Usopp was still in West Rob village. Whether it's for the Mary or the snipers of the Straw Hat Pirates, Silib village is a must-go place. Great, can we finally have our own pirate ship? Everyone, let's go get our boat right now. Luffy almost jumped with excitement. Idiot, we are still far away from Zailuobu village now. At the current sailing speed, we won't be able to reach our destination in just a few days. Nami took out the navigation chart, looked at it, and sighed again. Now she just wants to find a boat with a bathroom and take a cool bath. Since it still takes a few days to reach the destination. Nami, are you interested in taking advantage of this time to exercise your strength? Rosie asked. Power. Nami pursed her lips and immediately realized what Rosie's words meant. What is supposed to come will definitely come. Single quote. Forget it, I have no choice now, I'll just trust this guy once. Single quote. Luffy and Zoro have not changed. If they inherit the heroic spirit template, I will definitely not have any problems. Single quote. Nami thought to herself and took a deep look at Luo Qi. Now that she had made a decision, she didn't want to continue to hesitate, as that would only make her sleepless and dreamy. Until now, I have seen Luffy's behavior as a pirate but was willing to leave his treasure to Orange Town, and I have seen Rossi and Zoro's usual speech and behavior. Nami didn't say anything, but in her heart she gradually felt that the men in front of her were different from other pirates. Perhaps it would be nice to join them. Single quote. Nami smiled and said to Rossi. Rossi, I'm ready, let me see what heroic spirits I have to choose from. After hearing Nami's words, Luffy and Zoro also became interested instantly. As you wish, trust me, you won't regret it. Rossi also stood up, smiled and nodded to Nami. The next moment, Luo Qi activated the system permissions and brought everyone on the ship into the heroic space. Nami, this is the heroic spirit you can choose. Navigator, Christopher Columbus, he was a man with excellent navigation skills, a captain and an extremely greedy man. Kana Arupalona, she is a mage. Her card magic gives her the power to control various elements. Thief, Sato Kazuma. This person, well, how should I put it, is a man with very powerful stealing skills. But you should see it yourself for details. Nami, come here and choose. Rossi pointed to the panel in front of him and gave a general introduction to Nami. But when Kazuma Sato was introduced, the smile in the corners of Luo Qi's eyes almost spread out. After all, the stealing skill mastered by Sato Kazuma is quite a perverted trick for a woman. If you are not careful, you will pull the other party's inner pants directly from your body. I understand, Raza. With the experience of watching Luffy and Zoro make choices the first two times, Nami knew what she wanted to do. Without much hesitation, she raised her hand and pressed on the name, Christopher Columbus, at the front of the panel. Following the turmoil in the heroic space, several people instantly arrived on a huge ship that was experiencing a storm. On the deck, a tall man with a vicissitudes of face was constantly giving orders, directing the crew on the ship to control the ship. A few minutes later, with the tall man's last order, the ship finally broke out of the storm and arrived at the safe sea. Is this man very good at navigation? Nami raised her eyebrows, looked at the man and said. A layman looks at the excitement, and an insider looks at the door. In the storm just now, the order to control the ship issued by the tall man could not be faulted even in the eyes of a talented navigator like Nami. He is indeed a very good man in one-wheel navigation. Nami, take a good look, he is the navigator, Christopher Columbus. Luo Qi raised his hand and put it on Nami's shoulder, looking ahead calmly. Within the heroic spirit space, in just a few minutes, Nami felt as if she had lived at sea for months or even years. For a few minutes, she watched Columbus travel through the seas and islands through his eyes. Similarly, we also saw what Columbus did after he came to various islands. This man undoubtedly has excellent navigation skills. It's just that although he claims to be an explorer, he may be more suitable for the name of pirate than the name of explorer. Nami shook her head and sighed. Indeed, although he didn't see many scenes, he didn't reach an island. As long as there is an opportunity, he will plunder the island's indigenous people. They are even more like pirates than us pirates. Zoro said. Well, I hate this guy, Nami, you'd better not choose him as your heroic spirit template. Luffy put his hands on his hips and said to Nami with a tangled look on his face. Stupid, didn't you say last time not to interfere with other people's choices? Besides, even if Nami chooses the template of the heroic spirit Columbus, she will not become like him. Come to think of it, the Black Death Boko I chose is still an evil spirit, but I didn't become like him, did I? Zoro hit Luffy on the head with a punch to stop him from continuing. Nami didn't say anything, but continued to look at the picture in front of her. At this moment, the picture showing Columbus's navigation skills has disappeared, replaced by his appearance as a heroic spirit and a servant fighting. Facing the enemies surrounding him, Columbus used knives, guns, and even directly took up the rudder to smash the enemy, and the battle was full of blood and wailing. What? It's far worse than the heroic spirit Drake. Drake can at least summon turrets to attack, which is not cool at all. Luffy pouted and expressed his opinion again. Although Zoro did not speak, he was also somewhat disdainful of the fighting skills that Columbus had shown so far. Columbus is not a pure warrior after all, and his fighting style is indeed a bit exaggerated, but if he really fights, his strength is still very difficult to deal with. In addition, like the heroic spirit Drake, the heroic spirit Columbus also has the secret of the treasure. Their treasures are also quite similar. After Rosie finished speaking, the magic power on Columbus suddenly expanded. The next moment, in front of Nami and others, a huge sailing ship sprang out directly under Columbus's feet. Columbus raised his hand and grabbed the rudder with a grim smile, and issued his order. The flagship Santa Maria, which he was riding on, shot out a large anchor connected to the chain and smashed it towards the enemy on the opposite side. For a time, the area within a radius of hundreds of meters was covered by chains and anchors. The earth was also wailing under the bombardment of hundreds of heavy anchors. Cool, so ships can be attacked like this. Rosie, let's get a ship that can use anchors as cannonballs, right? Seeing Columbus's noble phantasm, Luffy threw away his previous prejudice against Columbus and shouted excitedly. Luffy, there is no such convenient ship in the world. That Columbus can summon such a ship because of the power called Noble Phantasm. Zoro said, Hee, even if you can't buy such a ship, Rosie can summon such a ship. Just like you summoned the golden deer before. Speaking of this, Rosie looked at Rosie with more expectation. Forget it, I don't want to get Columbus's power. Single quote. Rosie complained in his heart, smiled and shook his head at Luffy. Columbus's power and Drake's power overlap too much. If you want to rank them in terms of power, Drake's overall strength is stronger than Columbus. Among them, the Noble Phantasm should also be more applicable. In this way, even if he gets the power of Columbus, it is just equivalent to getting a replica of Drake's template. Compared with him, Rosie is more inclined to get the power of Thief, Sato Kazuma and Thousand Cups, Kana. Although they are all navigators, I think I may not be suitable for Columbus's power. I'd better look at others. Nami's eyes moved down and landed on the name of Thousand Cups, Kana. Kana Alupalona actually has the attribute of not getting drunk after 1,000 cups. Isn't this the same as the drunkard, Matsumoto Rengoku, one of Zoro's 3 previous choices? I was going to ask that. By the way, Nami, you actually have the attribute of not getting drunk after 1,000 cups. Are you a good drinker? Hee, how is that possible? How can a lady like me be a drunkard? Rosie, did your heroic spirit space make a mistake? Hearing Nami's words, Rosie spread his hands and said, the heroic spirit space can detect Zoro's difficulty in direction attribute, and naturally it can also detect your not getting drunk after 1,000 cups attribute. Nami, if you have any doubts, why not touch the words not getting drunk after 1,000 cups with your hand? In this way, we can see if you really can't get drunk after 1,000 cups. Nami smiled awkwardly, and decisively raised her hand and slapped the name of Kana Alupalona. As for the scene of her drinking, she didn't intend to make it public. After all, every time she drank a lot of wine before, it was when she was about to knock the pirates out and steal their treasure. The scene changed, and everyone came to a busy building. Inside the building, people were either talking loudly or fighting. But no matter what people did, they were all smiling. So many people. Rosie, which one is Kana? Luffy looked at Rosie in confusion. Do I need to ask? It must be that one. Zoro raised his hand and pointed to a position in front of him. Luffy turned his head and saw a girl with long black curly hair, about 18 years old, holding a barrel and pouring wine into her stomach. Yes, she is Kana Alupalona, a member of the Magician's Guild, fairy tale, where we are now. When Rosie finished speaking, Kana had finished a barrel of wine, and then, as if she was not satisfied, she held another barrel of wine and drank. It's really enviable. We should really change to a bigger ship, preferably with a wine cellar for storing wine. Zoro licked his lips. Although he was really watching Kana drinking, the alcohol bug in his stomach had already woken up. Am I the only one who thinks that drinking like this is a bit too much? Even I wouldn't drink with a barrel. Nami pouted. You can try it next time. Anyway, drinking a barrel of wine is just a small problem with your alcohol tolerance. Rosie, you haven't seen me drinking. Don't say anything casually, okay? Okay, whatever you say is what it is. Rosie shrugged and said indifferently. 1 barrel, 2 barrels, 3 barrels. After Kana drank 3 barrels of wine, she seemed to be finally satisfied. She stood up from her seat and walked towards the door of the Union. When she pushed the door open and walked out, the perspective of Rosie and others also came to the outside of the Union. In the eyes of Rosie and others, Kana took out several magic cards from her waist pocket, and waves of magic began to surround her, and finally gathered on the magic cards. As Kana waved the cards forward, magic elements such as thunder, flames, icicles, wind blades, water whips, and poison gas were stimulated from the cards and shot towards the open space in the distance. For a moment, the open space 100 meters in front of Kana was completely covered by the chaotic magic elements. Zoro, Nami, and Luffy opened their eyes wide and looked at Kana's methods in amazement. None of the 3 people expected that the girl who looked weak at first would be so powerful when she started to fight. In her hands, many elemental powers were controlled like ordinary toys. Kana Alupalona, a quasi-S-level magician, masters card magic and can summon various elements from the cards to attack. It can be said that her fighting style is almost all-round, without any shortcomings. While Rosie introduced, Kana cast card magic several times again. Nami's eyes became brighter as she looked at Kana. Luochi raised his eyebrows. Seeing Nami's expression, he had a hunch about Nami's choice. Excluding the heroic spirit Columbus, the remaining 2 choices would not be to choose the thief, Sato Kazuma. The picture turned again, and a tall man confronting Kana appeared in Nami and others' sight. Kana took a deep breath and stretched out her right hand with a mysterious tattoo to the man. One of the 3 great magics of the fairy. Kana shouted, and a golden magic light beam that penetrated the sky and the earth rose from her position. The originally dark sky was instantly illuminated, and the dark clouds covering the sky were also dispelled. The light of the fairy. As soon as the voice fell, the light in the sky instantly condensed into a giant ring and fell towards the enemy in front of Kana. Such a strong power, can I really master such power? Nami stared blankly at the front. Even though Kana's image had disappeared, she did not come back to her senses. As long as you can inherit Kana's heroic spirit template, you can naturally master her power. If you really don't have confidence, I can lend you a devil fruit to help you master Kana's power. Rosie patted Nami on the shoulder and said, "Thank you, Rosie. If there is no accident, I think I might choose her template. Even if you don't consider the last move she performed, the power that can control various elements in front is already good enough." Nami's eyes turned, and at this time she even began to consider how to use Kana's card magic to fight. Great, really great, that move just now was a laser, right? It's a laser that's bigger and stronger than the Golden Deer's artillery fire. So powerful, I want to take a look. By the way, Rosie, that Kana just mentioned the 3 magics of the fairies, is there another 2 powerful laser magics besides the one just now? Luffy's eyes were shining, and he looked at Rosie excitedly. Well, there are indeed 2 more moves, but they are still very different from the fairy's glory. It's just that Kana didn't master those 2 moves. To be precise, even the fairy's glory can only be regarded as Kana's borrowed power. Rosie nodded and said, even if it's borrowed power, it's strong enough. Rosie, where did you get these heroic spirit templates? Kuroshibo's demonization, Arrow's gourmet cells, Drake's treasure, and Kana's magic, etc., are these powers really powers that exist in this world? Nami turned around and asked the question that she had been puzzled about for a long time. Existence is the truth. As long as you can use it for a short time, is that enough? You should regard the power of these heroic spirits as a power that has long passed and disappeared in the long river of history. But don't you want to see the power of the thief, Sato Kazuma, our navigator and thief, Ms. Nami? Hearing what Rosie said, Nami nodded. Although she was almost sure that she would choose Kana's heroic spirit template, she was still quite curious about the last thief, attribute Sato Kazuma. As Nami raised her hand and pressed on the name of Sato Kazuma, the entire heroic spirit space rotated again. A second later, the few people had arrived at a quiet alley. In the alley, there were only two people besides them, a man and a woman. Steal. The man stretched out his hand and shouted at the woman. With a flash of light, a gauze-like thing appeared in his hand. Ah, this is, ha ha ha, I won the jackpot, isn't this a small panty? The man laughed and waved the panty in his hand, completely ignoring the shy expression of the woman opposite. Bah, what a hooligan. Nami snorted. At this time, she didn't know that the man in front of her was the thief, Sato Kazuma. Even so, she was quite curious about how Sato Kazuma stole the clothes on the woman's body from several meters away. Hey, Zoro, did you see how he stole the things? Luffy poked Zoro's waist with his elbow. Like Nami, Luffy was also very curious. I didn't see it clearly, but the pants seemed to appear out of thin air in the man's hand. Zoro put his hand on the samurai sword at his waist. Although it seemed funny that Sato Kazuma stole a pair of pants, Zoro couldn't laugh at all. If such a skill is used on a swordsman like him, it might be a disaster. Luffy, Nami, and Zoro all turned to look at Rosie, wanting Rosie to give an answer. The skill, steal, is the reason why Sato Kazuma was rated as a thief. Nami, unlike you who use skills to steal other people's property, Sato Kazuma's stealing skill is a completely magical skill. As long as this magic is activated, there is a certain chance of stealing something from the opponent. The higher a person's luck value is, the easier it is to steal successfully and the easier it is to steal the opponent's precious items. Although the Sato Kazuma in front of you is slightly weaker in strength, his luck value is indeed ridiculously high, and he can easily steal the opponent's important things. In addition, perhaps it is because of this guy's devilish psychology. When he uses the stealing skill on a woman, there is a high probability that he will steal the other's private clothes. Roki spread his hands and smiled. Nami, bah, not only a gangster, but also a pervert. Luffy, great, then can we steal other people's flesh directly? Zoro, using it on a swordsman, can we really easily steal the swordsman's weapon? Roche smiled and raised his hand and snapped his fingers. As the screen turned, the three of them saw Sato Kazuma using the stealing skill on other women to successfully steal private clothes. Such a scene made Nami, a lady, shy and angry. What? This man can't have only this ability. I don't need such a heroic spirit. Even if I don't use this stealing ability, I can steal other people's property. Nami shook her head and said, of course Sato Kazuma doesn't only have the skill of stealing. As an adventurer, although he is not very strong, he has learned all kinds of skills. As Roche said, the screen really came to the time when Sato Kazuma was fighting. Sniping, lurking, and various elemental magics were used by Sato Kazuma, making Luffy dazzled. Just when Luffy was excited, the scene suddenly turned sharply. Sato Kazuma was killed by a monster because of his teammates. His body lost its life characteristics and fell to the ground motionlessly. How come he died suddenly? Nami frowned. She had come to the heroic spirit space 3 times, and this was the first time she saw someone die in the video. Sato Kazuma's heroic spirit template has a very special power, which is far beyond the power of noble phantasm and so on. Goddess Aqua's favor. Even if the person who obtains Sato Kazuma's heroic spirit template dies, he can rely on the power of the goddess to revive. After Luochi finished speaking, Nami and others looked at Luochi in surprise. Luochi raised his hand and pointed to the front screen, where the goddess named Aqua was performing the resurrection spell. But in just a few minutes, Sato Kazuma, who had already died, stood up again. Hey, isn't this kind of power too abnormal, Vice Captain? Resurrection. If there is such a power, then those who have died. And this power should be the power of that woman, right? Zoro's body trembled with excitement, his eyes fixed on the blue-haired goddess Aqua. At this moment, he thought of his dead friend Kuina. Not only Zoro, Nami is also very excited. Rosie, can I revive those who have died if I choose Sato Kazuma's heroic spirit template? Nami grabbed Rosie's arm with both hands, almost crying with excitement. Knowing the past of Nami and Zoro, Rosie certainly knew what they were thinking. They had both experienced the sudden departure of important people. Facing the power of resurrection, it was impossible for the two not to be moved. It's a pity, Nami. Although Sato Kazuma and Aqua are different people, they are closely connected because of a certain contractual relationship. Because of this favor, even if Sato Kazuma dies, Aqua will revive Sato Kazuma because of her own ideas. And this resurrection ability, Aqua will only use it on Sato Kazuma. In other words, after inheriting Sato Kazuma's heroic spirit template, even if it can be resurrected, the resurrected person is limited to the person who uses Sato Kazuma's heroic spirit template. And this resurrection ability is not unlimited. When the user is resurrected, the heroic spirit template of Sato Kazuma will enter a cooling state. At that time, any of Sato Kazuma's abilities will not be available. To reactivate, you can only consume a devil fruit. Rossi shook his head and said to Nami. He learned this information from the system. Even if he obtains the heroic spirit template of Sato Kazuma, once he uses the ability of resurrection, the heroic spirit template of Sato Kazuma will also fall into a cooling state. Rossi could understand this. After all, the wise blue goddess Aqua was not really by his side. Under such circumstances, it is a great blessing to be able to be resurrected once through the favor of goddess Aqua. I see, I understand. That's right, resurrection or something like that can't be that easy. Nami pursed her lips, lowered her head and sighed deeply. After Rossi took out a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to Nami, he stood aside without saying a word, waiting for Nami to make a decision. After a while, Nami put a faint smile on her face again, and smiled as if nothing was wrong. Columbus, Kana, Sato Kazuma, although Columbus and Sato Kazuma have more interesting powers. Sato Kazuma's stealing skills are indeed good, but as expected, I still choose Kana. I think she and I are quite compatible, hee hee. As she spoke, Nami stretched out her finger and pointed on Kana's name. As it integrated into Nami's body, she keenly felt that there was a magical power in her body, and a lot of knowledge about the use of card magic emerged in her mind. Unfortunately, this knowledge does not include knowledge about the fairy's glory, one of the three major magics of fairies. At the same time, the system's voice also sounded in Luoqi's mind. Bite. Nami made a choice, obtained the template of 1,000 cups will not fail, Kana Arupalona, and understood Kana Arupalona's initial skills. Through training and becoming stronger, she can master more heroic spirit template skills. Note: consuming devil fruit for your partner can speed up the process of understanding the heroic spirit template skills, and even the secret skills. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the 1,000 cups will not flow, Kana Arupalona template and the thief, Sato Kazuma template, and understanding all the skills of the heroic spirit template. Note: although the host can understand all the skills of the heroic spirit template, whether the skills can be used is linked to the host's own strength. Is this Kana's power? Did Kana's card even appear in my place? Nami curiously took out several magic cards from her pocket. The shape of these magic cards is exactly the same as the magic cards Kana said to use in the previous image. Nami, try that card magic. Now you should be able to release the power of fire and lightning. Luffy's eyes were shining, eager to let Nami show off his power. Nami nodded slightly, dispersed in the heroic spirit space, and everyone returned to the ship again. Nami couldn't wait to use her power. Suddenly, elements such as flames, thunder and lightning, and water whips were constantly stimulated and fell on the sea in the distance. Being able to really use these powers, apart from some physical exhaustion, there seems to be no other feeling. Single quote. It turns out that obtaining the heroic spirit template really has no side effects. Single quote. Nami raised her head and looked at Luoqi. At this moment, she couldn't help but feel a little sorry for Luoqi. But these apologies were quickly replaced by other feelings. Hey, Your Excellency, Vice Captain. Didn't you say you wanted to use devil fruit to help me increase my strength? Look, I'm not a monster like Luffy and Zoro after all. Without the power of the devil fruit, I might not be able to fully master Kana's power for a long time. So, at the end of the sentence, Nami even took Rosie's hand and shook it from side to side. If you want to master the power of a heroic spirit, if you are compatible with the chosen heroic spirit, you can also speed up the mastery process. However, this kind of thing is not absolute after all. Since I promised to lend you a devil fruit before, I will keep my promise. As Rossi spoke, he opened the suitcase and took out the Niu fruit giraffe form. Get ready, Nami. Let me ask you one last time, do you really want to use this devil fruit? Of course, Vice Captain Luochi, feel free to do it. Nami opened her hands, looking like she was ready to do whatever you wanted. As you wish. Rossi raised his hand and flicked the devil fruit in his hand, and the next moment it turned into a pure energy light and poured directly into Nami's heart. In just a moment, Nami felt her heartbeat more than double. At the same time, the mysterious tattoo on her heart that appeared due to the heroic spirit Kana's template became increasingly clear and bright. A few seconds later, when the light surrounding Nami dissipated, Luffy and others discovered a mysterious tattoo on Nami's right wrist. It was the tattoo that appeared when Kana used one of the three major fairies' magic, Fairy's Glory. This tattoo. Nami, can you already use that huge laser magic? Luffy opened his eyes wide and immediately asked the doubts in his heart. It seems possible. Nami looked at the tattoo on her hand. However, from the knowledge I gained, it seems that using this power requires a lot of physical strength. Can I really use it now? Of course it can be used. Luochi nodded slightly. However, if the physical strength is not enough, the power of using Fairy's Glory will also be reduced a lot. Moreover, the user may fall into a coma after using Fairy's Glory. Quote, is it comatose? But even if I fall into a coma, it will be fine. Nami raised her eyes and looked at Rossi. After all, our vice captain will definitely not leave me alone while I am in a coma. Of course not, even for the sake of the devil fruit I will pack you up and take you away. Huh, devil fruit. Yes, it's a devil fruit. I lent you that devil fruit just now. For the sake of your companions, I'll give you 100 million berry for that devil fruit. 1.100 million belly. Vice Captain Rossi, you don't want me to pay you back 100 million belly, right? Didn't you give me that devil fruit? Please, when did I say I would give it to you? I said, borrow it, okay. You're trying to frame me. Nami yelled, stepped forward and punched Luochi twice in the chest. It's just that this amount of strength is not enough for Luochi to scratch an itch. Okay Nami, I'm just kidding you. He took Nami's hand and said with a smile. Then get familiar with your power. After you become more familiar with the power on your body, you can freely choose whether to reveal the Fairy's Glory tattoo on your hand. As for now, let's entertain our guests. After speaking, Luochi turned to look at the sea diagonally behind him, a red light flashing in his eyes. Guest, Rossi, what are you talking about? There is nothing there. Luffy pressed his straw hat and followed Rossi's line of sight, but he only saw the endless sea. Zoro and Nami looked at Rossi with the same confusion. There are many types of devil fruits in this world, and naturally some of them can achieve the effect of invisibility. Luffy, Zoro, you still need to master the Haki of wisdom and color quickly. While Luochi was speaking, he had already pulled out the long sword Jinpailao from his back and swung a flying slash forward. Just when Zoro and others were confused, flying slash suddenly exploded as if it hit something. Ale, those just seemed to be arrows, right? Luffy said confused. It's indeed an arrow, I won't be mistaken. Luochi is right, there are indeed invisible enemies ahead. Zoro pulled out the long sword from his waist, and without thinking about the world, he used the breath of the moon to strike several flying slashes with small crescent moons on the area in front of him. The opponent relied on the ability of invisibility to get closer and fired bows and arrows for no reason. Sauron already regarded the opponent as an enemy. It's just that these flying slashes were intercepted by several bows and arrows and exploded while they were in midair. The explosive bows and arrows, and the power of invisibility, could they be those guys? Nami opened her mouth wide in surprise. At this moment, a group of dangerous people she had encountered before appeared in her mind. What, do you know who the other party is, Nami? Zoro asked without looking back. It looks a lot like a group of treasure hunters I met before. Raza, is there any way you can let us see them? Nami nodded heavily and turned to look at Luoqi, only to see Luoqi stretching out his hand towards the sea in the distance. Theft. The corners of Luoqi's mouth rose. Since an enemy was coming, he decisively chose to try Sato Kazuma's power. Hey, what is this? The sudden touch on his hand made Rossi look over immediately. Private underwear, and it belongs to a woman. Luoqi, you. Nami pointed at Roki and was about to scold Roki for being a pervert, when a burst of screams suddenly erupted from the sea opposite. Ah, who is it? Who stole my pants? Upon hearing this, Zoro and Luffy looked at each other, and each used their own methods to attack the direction from which the sound came. Breath of the Moon 3 types Hateful Moon Eclipse. Flying Fork. The sharp flying slashes and flying forks quickly swept across the sea, heading straight towards the direction of the sound. Just when Luffy and the two thought their attack was going to work, a series of chains suddenly appeared and intercepted the two men's attacks. Chain, it is indeed that guy. Mad Torega, show yourself, I know it's you. When Nami saw this scene, Nami immediately stood up and shouted to the sea opposite. Nami looked straight at the space opposite her. However, after she called out the name of Mad Torega, there was no movement at all on the other side. He neither continued to attack nor continued to approach Luoqi. Nami, the Mad Torega you are talking about doesn't seem to want to pay attention to you. Luoqi turned his head and said to Nami with interest. Mad Torega, since you don't want to show up, I will force you to show up. Card magic, flame, lightning, wind blade, water flow. Nami's face was grim, and she threw out several magic cards to summon various elements to attack the other side. Because Nami's attack was not directed at the possible location of Mad Trega, but at the sea surface, Mad Trega and others who were in stealth mode on the opposite side were not able to intercept all the attacks in time. The power of magic lifted the seawater high, forming a curtain of water that dripped onto the ship where Mad Trega was riding. The fall of these water curtains also allowed Nami and others to see the opposite ship for the first time. Mad Torega, why don't you come out? As long as these water curtains are around, your ship will not be able to become invisible. The corners of Nami's mouth rose, obviously very satisfied with the effect of her first use of magic. Dispel the invisibility effect, Seku P. There is no way to continue to be invisible like this. Your ability seems to have no effect on the man over there. As a hoarse voice came to mind, a large ship gradually appeared opposite Luoqi and others. As expected, it's you, Mad Torega. Why are you here? Also, what about Karina? What will you do with Karina? Nami's eyes were fixed on Mad Torega across from her, her expression looking a little grim. Once upon a time, Nami and Karina teamed up to be thieves on the sea. One day, they met a team of treasure hunters led by Mad Torega. At that time, Karina lured Mad Torega and others away in order to protect Nami. It is impossible for Nami not to worry about Karina. But because of the affairs of the dragon pirates in her hometown, she couldn't find out too much about Karina. At this moment, meeting Mad Torega again, Nami finally couldn't help but ask the questions in her heart. We meet again, little thieving cat. Did I really expect to meet you in this situation? Obviously our target is that man. As for Karina, what do you think will be the consequences for her who deceived me? Mad Torega made a gesture of wiping her neck to Nami, and then set his sights on Razi. In addition to Mad Torega, the man wearing a thick down jacket and a peaked cap next to him and another woman with a bow and arrow in her hand and a blushing face were also staring at Razi. Asshole, how dare you kill Karina, I will never forgive you. Nami roared angrily, and was about to continue attacking Mad Torega. Nami, calm down. My sense and color hockey can sense the emotions of others to a certain extent, and I have done some research on observing words and colors because of my previous work. That guy showed obvious signs of lying when he mentioned Karina just now. The Karina you mentioned is probably not in trouble. Rossi put his hand on Nami's shoulder, stopping her movement. Just kidding, he is a character who knows the plot well, how could he not know if something is wrong with Karina? Ha, thank you Luoqi, I just lost my temper. Nami took a breath and finally calmed down after Razi reminded her. Of course, she was more willing to believe Rosie's reasoning. Seeing and hearing hockey, I've heard of this kind of power. It seems to be a power that can enhance personal perception. Luo Qi, are you just using the power of seeing and hearing to see through my transparency ability? Seku Pi frowned and looked at Luo Qi fearfully. It's no wonder that in the entire East China Sea, this is the first time he has met someone who can see through his abilities. Faintly, he has even regarded Luo Qi as a person who must be eliminated. That's right, I did rely on the hockey of seeing and hearing to sense that you were approaching. Speaking of which, since I answered your question, you should also answer my question. I just heard you say that you came to me specifically. Can I ask why you came to me? After all, it seems that we have never met, and we don't have much interaction. Luo Qi looked at the treasure hunters across from him curiously and asked. Ha ha ha, I just heard that the man who stole the celestial dragon's treasure came to the East China Sea, and I happen to be very interested in the celestial dragon's treasure, so I came to look for you. It's just that I didn't expect that I would meet you so soon, and also meet the little thief cat who once deceived me. This is just the right time to solve two things at once. Mad Torega laughed and threw two chains at Roki and Nami. Bite, bite. With two crisp sounds, the chains projected by Mad Torega were intercepted by Luffy and Zoro respectively. Is there a chain sticking out of the palm? It looks like it's a devil fruit user. Really, since I met Luffy, why do devil fruit users always appear in my sight? Zoro carried Hidao Yiwen and stared at Mad Torega opposite with interest. HMPH, Razi and Nami are our partners, and you are absolutely not allowed to take action against them. Luffy clenched his fists and warned Mad Torega dissatisfied. This is not something you just say, do it, Naomi. Mad Torega shouted. I can't wait any longer. Archer Naomi snorted coldly, raised her bow and arrow and aimed directly at Luo Qi. Little thief, although I don't know what methods you used, there is no need for you to tell me. You will die soon anyway. With that said, Naomi planned to shoot the explosive arrow in her hand. Theft. The corner of Rossi's mouth raised, and he quickly used the stealing skill on Naomi again. The target, of course, is the bow and arrow in Naomi's hand. Sato Kazuma's luck is second only to the goddess of luck, although before entering the mimicry of the heroic spirit, Rossi's luck is not as exaggerated as Sato Kazuma's. But from being able to steal Naomi's underwear just now, Rosie knew that his luck with Sato Kazuma's power would definitely not be too low. If it was low, he would never steal such private clothes for women. Since Naomi's underwear has been stolen, the next thing to be stolen is naturally the precious bow and arrow. Buzz. A ray of light flashed, and Rosie once again felt that there was some thin clothing in his hand. Looking up, Rosie was stunned. Not only him, but the people around him also stayed where they were after seeing what Rosie was holding. Until Naomi suddenly screamed, "Ah, fool, I'm going to kill you." Swish, swish, swish. Naomi shot 3 arrows in a row, heading straight for Roki's face. Seeing this, Roki sighed helplessly, stuffed all the bras and panties in his hands into Nami's hands, and slashed 3 flying slashes at the arrows flying towards him. Pervert, what do you want to do with these things for me? Nami looked at Roki fiercely, raised her hand and threw the clothes in her hand onto the boat. It's just a coincidence, and don't call me a pervert. I just used Sato Kazuma's power. He is the pervert. Humph, you dare not admit it. I don't believe that you can't control Sato Kazuma's power. You must want to steal those things yourself, so you can steal them. I'm really sad that you don't believe me so much. I've decided that in order to avoid such a situation in the future, I must practice this power diligently. Nami, you come to be my training object. I don't want to, you guy, stay away from me. Nami hugged her shoulders, retreated repeatedly, and soon came to the tail of the boat. On the other side, seeing that Roche not only stole her inner clothes, but also gave them to others so casually, Naomi's mentality exploded instantly. Asshole, you are all assholes, die for me. Naomi took out all the bows and arrows in the quiver, and looked like she was going to fight Roche to the death. Luffy and Zoro, who had seen the power of Naomi's explosive bows and arrows, were instantly alert. What they didn't notice was that Roche once again posed to Naomi using the stealing skill. Buzz. A familiar light flashed in Rock's hand, and Naomi only felt her hand lighten, and the weapon in her hand disappeared. Haha, finally succeeded. By the way, how did you make this arrow that could produce such a powerful explosion? Roche fiddled with the bow and arrow in his hand, and asked Naomi with a smile. Asshole, give it back to me. Naomi pulled out the short knife behind her and jumped directly to Rock's position. Okay, I'll give it back to you. Roki bent his bow and put an arrow on it, and Sato Kazuma's sniper skill was activated instantly. Naomi only felt a strong wind passing over her face, and then a huge explosion occurred behind her. She also changed her jumping direction due to the airflow of the explosion and accidentally fell into the sea. What? Why is the arrow so fast? Naomi popped her head out of the sea and stared blankly at the burning ship. In theory, even if Roki used her bow and arrow, Mad Torega should be able to intercept those arrows with the lock fruit. Sorry, my skill, sniper, happens to speed up the bow and arrow shooting speed. It can also increase the destructive power of the arrow to a certain extent. You made this explosive arrow well, so the result is like that. Roki put away the bow and arrow, shrugged and said to Naomi in the sea. He, Rosie, you were really amazing. Then, I can't fall behind. Luffy laughed, stretched out his hands and immediately grabbed the opposite side of the boat and jumped over. Zoro pulled out the other two swords and followed closely. Soon, the shouts of fighting resounded on the sea. Naomi frowned, looking at the fighting power of Zoro and Luffy. As a leader of the treasure hunters, she immediately wanted to go back to help. At this moment, a figure came to her on the strong wind. Before she could react, the person picked up her collar and flew up. At this time, Naomi noticed that it was Rosie, whom she hated, who caught her. I advise you not to move. Without your bow and arrow, you are like a tiger without teeth. Your fighting power has been greatly reduced. If I were you, I would just stay here quietly at this time. Roki glanced at Naomi and used the moon step to bring her to the boat where he and Naomi were riding. What do you want to do to me? Naomi looked at the bow and arrow in Roki's hand, and then looked at the clothes that belonged to her thrown on the boat by Nami, and shouted at Roki with shame and anger. I'm just a little curious, who gave you the courage to come to me for trouble? Roki shook his head and continued. Forget it, let's talk about Kalina. My companion is more worried about Ms. Kalina, why don't you tell me where she is now? Rosie roughly guessed the reason why the treasure hunter came back to find him. It's nothing more than arrogance, thinking that he can defeat Rosie. HMPH, do you think I will tell you? You are really tough, I hope you can be so tough next time. What are you going to do? It's nothing big, I just plan to absorb your vitality. Rosie said, and put his right hand on Naomi's shoulder and directly activated the skill of life absorption. Life absorption is a skill that Sato Kazuma learned from the Lich. For the user, this is a skill that can quickly restore their own vitality, but for the enemy, it is not a happy thing. Naomi only felt that the temperature of her body dropped instantly, as if she was thrown into an ice cellar. At the same time, her physical strength was also rapidly lost. After a while, Naomi's body couldn't help but tremble. Asshole, what are you going to do? Naomi looked up at Rosie and questioned. Didn't I say it before? My partner is very curious about where Karina is now. If you are willing to tell me about her, I will stop extracting your life. But if you keep talking so hard, I don't need to tell you the result. Rosie smiled gently at Naomi, but such a smile seemed like the smile of a devil in her eyes. In fact, Karina's affairs should not be a secret that you have to keep, right? My beautiful lady, are you really going to lose your life because of these things? I also promise you that as long as you can tell me the truth, I will persuade my partner to let you go. Nami squatted down in front of Naomi, looking directly into Naomi's eyes. Naomi gritted her teeth. She wanted to wait for her companions to rescue her, but she was controlled by Rosie's life absorption, and she couldn't even turn her head to look at her companions. A few minutes later, she only felt that her consciousness was getting heavier and heavier. She had no choice but to tell what she knew about Kalina. Really, did that woman go to the Grand Line? I didn't expect that she would go to the sea area before me. Nami sighed, her eyes fell on Naomi who fell on the deck. Rosie, she won't be in trouble. It's okay, she just fainted, she won't die. Rosie waved his hand and looked at the battle on the opposite side. At this moment, several chains rushed out of the smoke, targeting Rosie and Nami. Rosie frowned and kicked the chains away. Luffy and Zoro, what are those two guys doing? How can that man attack us? Rosie shook his head, kicked his feet hard on the deck, and was about to see how Luffy and the others were fighting. Wait, take me with you. Nami quickly hugged Rosie's waist. The next moment, the two of them soared into the sky and landed on the treasure hunter's ship. Hey, why is Luffy fighting with Zoro? Wait, what about those weird-looking guys who look a bit like Zoro? Nami stared at the scene in front of her and couldn't help but fall into deep confusion. It's the trick of the color fruit ability user. That guy used his ability to create a few guys who look a bit like Zoro. Luffy couldn't tell them apart, so he fought with the real Zoro and the fake Zoro. Rosie sighed and instantly revealed the situation in front of him. How are those people similar to Zoro? Although their clothes seem to be similar, their faces are not the same as Zoro's. It's a pity, Nami. Just like Zoro, Luffy is face blind. His way of recognizing people is different from ours. Hearing what Rosie said, Nami couldn't help but twitch her lips and sighed. Really, there are all these weird people around me. Rosie smiled, patted Nami's shoulder, and looked to the other side. There, Mad Torega was walking over with heavy steps. I admit that I underestimated you. Your partners are very powerful, different from the enemies I met in the East China Sea before. Mad Torega first glanced at Naomi lying on Captain Rosie, then turned to Rosie and said. So, do you want to surrender? HMPH, how can that be possible? Although the situation is different from what I expected, as long as I defeat you and then deal with those two people, everything will return to normal. After saying this, Mad Torega leaned forward and quickly rushed towards Roche and Nami. Don't worry, Roche chuckled, raised his hand and used card magic to summon a flame that bombarded Mad Torega and forced him back several meters. So powerful, the same magic, why is it that you are so much stronger than me when you use it, Roche? Nami was surprised. Don't worry, Nami, you can definitely reach the level just now as long as you practice. In order to reach this level as soon as possible, I think you can go to that Mad Torega and practice hard. By the way, it's like avenging yourself, isn't it? Luochi showed a big smile to Nami, and immediately used the lurking skill to hide his aura. In the eyes of Nami and Mad Torega, who had no sense of domineering power, Rosie seemed to be completely invisible. Wait a minute, Rosie, come out. How can I be the opponent of Mad Torega? Seeing Luochi disappear, Nami immediately panicked. Come on Nami, you can only grow up quickly if you defeat Mad Torega yourself. Single quote. As long as you can defeat Mad Torega, you will have the confidence to defeat the dragon pirates. Single quote. Don't forget that you still have a trump card. Single quote. Luochi did not reply to Nami. After blessing Nami in his heart, he remained lurking and came to the unmanned place on the deck. As for Zoro and Luffy who were fighting, he had no interest in helping. Anyway, with him watching, he didn't think anything would really happen to Nami, Luffy and Zoro. That kid disappeared. Could it be that he took a similar devil fruit to Sekupi? Nami, your new partner is so cruel. He even asked you to stay to deal with me, but he hid alone. Mad Torega opened his mouth and looked at Nami mockingly. Having said that, his eyes hidden under his sunglasses looked around from time to time. Obviously, he couldn't completely relax about Luochi who was hiding in the dark. Although the more difficult it is to snatch the treasure, the happier he is. The situation that things have developed to this point has far exceeded his budget. Nami took a long breath, turned around and looked directly at Mad Torega. At this time, she also understood that Luochi would not show up for the time being. Mad Torega must be dealt with by her. Rosie, after this thing is over, I will make sure you look good. Nami cursed angrily. Even so, Nami didn't feel too worried. She knew that if there was a dangerous situation, Rosie would definitely show up to help. You'd better pay attention to the situation here first, Nami. Mad Torega snorted coldly, raised his hand and bound Nami with a chain. Nami's eyes narrowed, and she immediately took out two cards and released fire and water respectively. When the two collided, a mist of water immediately formed around Nami and Mad Torega, and the originally clear battlefield instantly became hazy. HMPH, little trick. Mad Torega looked at the shadow belonging to Nami in the mist with disdain, threw two chains and attacked Nami. However, Since he didn't know how to use his haki, he didn't realize that the object he was attacking was not the real Nami, but a doll summoned by Nami using card magic. At the same time as Mad Torega launched the attack, Nami had already circled to Mad Torega's side. This man's defense is very strong, but all devil fruit users have certain weaknesses. Single quote. Just push him into the water. Single quote. Nami's eyes narrowed, and she used magic to summon a strong wind that swept towards Mad Torega. What? Mad Torega, who originally thought that his attack had been effective, was shocked and quickly blocked the chain to form a defensive shield in front of him. But even so, his body was still lifted into the air in a hurry. Now, Nami threw a card into the air and summoned an icicle to hit Mad Torega. Although Mad Torega defended the icicle, his body had already flown out of the ship. Great, it worked. Nami almost jumped up with joy, but soon her expression froze. Mad Torega, who had already flown out of the ship, actually used his devil fruit ability to wrap around the side of the ship. With a strong effort of his arm, he returned to the deck again. Nami, I admit that I underestimated you. I didn't expect that. I haven't seen you for so long and you have become a devil fruit user. And he is actually able to use his abilities to this extent. Next, I won't hold back anymore. Because Nami used card magic to summon the wind, the original fog had disappeared. At this moment, Mad Torega could clearly see Nami's position. I saw him kicking his feet hard on the deck, and instantly rushed towards Nami at more than twice the speed just now. I won't lose. Nami gritted her teeth. The unexplained ability was not the power of the devil fruit, but she instantly threw out several cards to summon various elements to fight with Mad Tragar. However, although Nami got the power of Kana, her own physical strength was too weak after all, and soon she fell into a reverse situation. Nami gritted her teeth and insisted on fighting with Mad Tragar, but for Mad Tragar, who had already used all his strength, Nami's power still seemed a little immature. After Mad Tragar wrapped the chain around his fist and smashed the ice pillar summoned by Nami, he had already come close to Nami. Die, Nami! Mad Tragar's mouth cracked, and he grinned while punching Nami's head with great force. Faintly, the air hit by Mad Traga was wailing. It can be imagined that after being hit by such a blow, Nami must be seriously injured. Oh no! Single quote. Nami's heart jumped, and she subconsciously called out Razi's name. Bang! Suddenly, Mad Traga felt a heavy blow to his abdomen, and his body flew backwards uncontrollably. Ahem, who attacked me? Mad Traga covered his abdomen and looked at Nami with a ferocious face. Sure enough, he saw a man next to her. It was the man who used some kind of transparent ability that he was wary of before. Rosie. Nami looked at Rosie with surprise. Unlike Mad Traga, Rosie's appearance made Nami feel unprecedentedly relieved. It's good to be able to do this, Nami. Should we put an end to this battle next? Roche, who had exited the lurking state, patted Nami's shoulder and turned to look at Mad Traga, who was looking at him warily. Indeed, this battle should be put to an end. Nami nodded. So, do you need me to defeat him? No, I still have one move that I haven't used yet. Vice Captain Roche, can you protect me for a while, Marfa? It's my first time using that move, and I'm a little uncomfortable. Understood. You can use it boldly. No one can hurt you while the move is taking shape. Roche instantly understood that Nami wanted to use the fairy's glory, and decisively stood in front of Nami, raising his hand and waving a series of magic cards. Hee, it's really reassuring. Nami chuckled and suddenly raised her right arm to point at Mad Traga. As the tattoo on her hand shone, golden light began to gather around her body. I'm talking to myself in the middle of a battle. Don't underestimate me, you guys. Mad Torega's eyes widened, and he instinctively felt that something was wrong with Nami's aura. He roared angrily, raised his hand and fired several chains at Roche. At the same time, he quietly summoned a chain to smash the deck behind him, allowing the chain to attack Nami from under the deck. However, what Mad Torega didn't know was that his every move was within the perception range of Rock's observation haki. Don't play these tricks in front of me, it's useless. Roche raised his hand and tapped the card condensed with ice magic, and immediately summoned more than 10 ice spears to attack Mad Torega and the chains on the deck. Although Roche almost blocked all of his chains, seeing that he did not intercept the chains attacking Nami under the deck, Mad Torega couldn't help but curl up his mouth. Laugh, laugh now, and when I catch that woman, you all have to listen to me. Single quote. Mad Torea laughed in his heart, as if he had seen the scene of himself using the chain to capture Nami. However, just as he was controlling the chain to drill through the deck at Nami's feet, Roche reached out and grabbed the chain. What? Mad Torea's eyes widened. At this moment, he found that no matter how he pulled the chain he made with his fruit ability, he couldn't get the chain out of Rock's hand. I've said it before, it's useless to play these tricks in front of me. Rather than doing these useless things, I suggest you use your chain to wrap yourself up. Nami's next attack may be very painful. Roche laughed. As soon as the voice fell, Nami suddenly opened her eyes, and the magic power of the tattoo on her arm was maximized and formed a hundreds of meters high light column around her body. The sudden appearance of the dazzling beam of light made Luffy, Zoro and Sekupi, who were fighting together, stop involuntarily and turn to look at Nami, who was performing the fairy's light. What is this? Mad Trega opened his mouth wide and looked at the golden light in the sky slowly condensing into a golden collar in surprise. Could it be that this is an unknown treasure? Nami, give me the tattoo on your hand. Mad Trega instinctively felt that the light in the sky came from the tattoo on Nami's hand. As a treasure hunter, he was not afraid of the madness, but was eager to get the tattoo on Nami's hand. This is not a treasure that you can grasp, Mad Torega. Nami raised the corner of her mouth and looked at Mad Torega in front of her sarcastically. The light of the fairy's glory gave Nami strong self-confidence, and she no longer felt that Mad Torega was an insurmountable enemy. Gather together and guide the fairy's rivers of light. Light up, to destroy the minions of evil. The radiance of the fairies. As Nami finished speaking, the golden ring condensed in the sky suddenly fell and hit Mad Torega. The intense fairy light made everyone present unable to open their eyes for a moment. On the other side, there is the sea not far from the battlefield between the Straw Hat Pirates and the treasure hunters. A huge naval warship is sailing rapidly along the southeast direction. The huge word, crane, on the sail undoubtedly proves that the owner of this naval warship is the Navy's chief staff officer. At the bow of the warship, two women stood side by side, looking at the sea in the distance. If Luochi were here, he would definitely be able to recognize the two women in front of him. They were Suru and Gion, who had been chasing him for a long time. Gion, do you really not need to go back and rest? I can carry out the task of capturing Luochi. Crane suddenly spoke. Don't worry, Sister He. Gion turned to He and smiled. I have recovered now, don't worry, I can contribute my share to capture Luochi. Suru frowned, although Gion's face in front of him had the same smile as before. But as a sister, how could she not understand Gion? Today's Gion has obviously not returned to its previous state of tranquility. She understood that Gion must have something hidden in his heart. This situation has continued from the moment she received Gion until now. Spirit. Gion, you. Long. Just as he was about to continue persuading Gion, suddenly a burst of golden light beams burst out from the distant sky, pushing her words back. Group. What a powerful force. How can the East China Sea have such powerful energy? Sister He, what do you think? Gion frowned and looked at the crane next to him. The intelligence in Shields Town mentioned that Razi was able to summon a turret to release a golden laser. Although the scale of the laser in the intelligence is far from the golden light beam in front of me, it is necessary to confirm it. Gion, get ready, we are going there now. Crane said a few words, turned around and walked towards the other crew members. Yes, Sister He. Gion nodded heavily. For her at this moment, anything related to chasing Luochi was no small matter. However, is this kind of power really his power? Single quote. Why has he never used it? Single quote. Gion turned back to look at the sky, just in time to see the beam of light turn into a golden ring and fall heavily downwards. What was that just now? Where is the boss? How is the boss? Boss, he must have been hit by that light just now. Can the boss survive such a light? Idiot, the boss is invincible. He can withstand even the light just now. Are you right, brother Sekupi? Mad Torega's men had stopped fighting. They were a little worried, and some looked at Sekupi to ask for his opinion. But when they looked at Sekupi, they found that he had fainted on the deck. It turned out that Luffy stopped pestering Zoro because he was attracted by the glow of fairies. Sauron will naturally have the opportunity to find the absent Sekupi and knock him out. Seeing that the Kadri Sekupi had collapsed, the remaining treasure hunters who were still conscious suddenly became frightened. Awesome. Nami, you are so awesome. Use that move just now, huh? Razi, what happened to Nami after that? Luffy swept away the smoke with his hand and quickly came to Razi and Nami. But he saw that Nami was being supported by Luochi at this moment, and she had fallen into a slumber. Nami doesn't have enough physical strength. The move just now took away all of Nami's physical strength. Don't worry, she just fainted now. Rossi looked at the place where the fairy's glory fell and said, suffering an attack from one of the three major magics of the goblin, and the extremely destructive fairy's glory, Mad Torega was already dead at this moment. In fact, even the body has become tattered. Even if Nami's fairy glory is not complete, it is obviously far beyond what Mad Torega can handle now. You're careless, there's no way to get the devil fruit by killing the devil fruit user. Single quote. If I had known better, I would have done it myself and taken out Mad Torega's devil fruit first. Single quote. Luochi secretly thought of a pity and turned towards Sekupi, another devil fruit user in the treasure hunter team. What do you want to do? Tell you, we are noisy. Seeing that other treasure hunters still wanted to protect Sekupi, Rossi directly activated his overlord color hockey. Except for his own people, all the treasure hunters at the scene fainted one after another. After doing all this, Roche reached out and touched Sekupi's chest. When he raised his hand, he had a strange fruit with spiral marks on the surface. As expected of our vice captain, he can actually take out the devil fruit that others have eaten. Zoro inserted the long sword into the scabbard and stared at the fruit in Rock's hand with interest. Color fruit. The person who eats it can have the ability to make himself and the things that touch him invisible. It can also copy the color of an object and graft it onto other things. How about Zoro, are you interested in eating this devil fruit? Roche ran the color fruit in his hand and looked at Zoro with a smile. Aren't you collecting devil fruits to help strengthen the template of the heroic spirit? Of course, devil fruits can be used to strengthen the power of the heroic spirit, but that doesn't mean you can't directly eat devil fruits to gain certain abilities. Zoro, you just saw that guy's ability, don't you want to transform into a swordsman who can be invisible? Forget it, I don't want to become a landlubber like Luffy. Besides, I have my sword and the power of Kokushibo you gave me, which is enough. Really, that's a pity. Roche sighed. As someone who has read the original work, Roche knew that Sanji, the chef of the Straw Hat Pirates, hoped that he could gain the power of invisibility and even regarded the transparent fruit as his dream. It is conceivable that if Zoro eats the color fruit that also has the ability of invisibility, which can even be said to be the superior fruit of the transparent fruit, the relationship between Sanji and Zoro may become more interesting. Just imagining the quarrel between the two, Roche couldn't help laughing. I always feel that you are thinking about something very bad. Zoro frowned. No way. Roche waved his hand. Since the battle is over, let's leave. This ship was damaged by Nami's attack and can no longer sail. Let's take the treasure on this ship and return to our boat. Zoro and Luffy naturally had no objection to Rock's words. The three of them worked together and soon moved all the treasures on the ship. Roche, do you want to keep the bow and arrows of the woman who smelled of alcohol? Zoro returned to the ship and saw that Roche just threw Naomi back to the opposite ship and kept her weapons, and asked in confusion. The arrows of that woman are very interesting. I want to study them and maybe I can crack and strengthen them. Roche picked up a remaining arrow and looked at its arrowhead carefully. Do you plan to fight with a bow and arrow in the future? After putting down the treasure in his hand, Zoro also picked up the shipwright and rowed forward with Luffy. Although Nami was unconscious, Roche could understand the sea chart. Why not? I can use a bow and arrow myself. Roche smiled and continued. Of course, I hope to share the technology of this arrow with our future snipers rather than using it myself. Although there are still few people in our pirate group now, we will definitely have snipers in the future. In addition to combat skills, Sato Kazuma's strength also includes various life skills, including but not limited to the casting skills of blacksmiths, the magic tool-making skills of mages, the cooking skills of cooks, etc. Analyzing the arrows and explosives in your hand and strengthening them is not too simple. He is confident that when he meets Usopp, he can help Usopp make more and stronger ammunition. Yeah, Roche is right, we do need a sniper. Roche, when do you think we can have our sniper? Luffy asked while rowing. Maybe, at our next stop, we will be able to meet a sniper suitable for our pirate group. Rock's mouth corners raised, revealing an extremely mysterious smile. Others don't know, how could he not know? Soon, they will meet Usopp, the sniper king of the Straw Hat Pirates who always creates miracles in adversity. Suddenly, a red light flashed in Rock's eyes, and he looked behind him fiercely. Just now, his observation Haki sensed that many familiar auras were approaching here. Suru, Gion, and those female crew members. Tisk, am I really so destined to meet these women? Single quote. Roche frowned tightly. He understood that with the boat under their feet, there was no way they could outrun the warship. Hee, Roche is right, maybe we can find a sniper at the next stop. Okay, Zoro, let's row quickly, I can't wait to get to the island. Luffy shouted excitedly, and wanted to use the oars in his hand to row quickly. At this moment, a tremor came from under the boat. Luffy and Zoro looked down and found that the golden deer was actually rising to the surface of the sea, pushing up the boat they were riding on. Haha, since you are so anxious, Luffy. Then I will use the golden deer for a trip. Roche raised his hand and snapped his fingers, and the golden deer immediately drove in the designated direction at the highest speed. It soon disappeared from the spot. After a while, Crane's warship arrived at the place where Roche and others were fighting with the treasure hunters. Did a fight happen here? That familiar breath just now, could it really be him? Gion stood at the bow of the warship, looking at the direction where the golden deer left and fell into deep thought. Navy warship, interrogation room. Crane and Gion looked calm, looking at the treasure hunter Kadri's Naomi and Seku P in front of them with a majestic look. You just said that among the people who fought with you before, there was a man named Roche, right? Gion knocked on the table in front of Naomi, and his body became more and more cold. No, yes, I did fight him, but I was defeated by him very quickly. Naomi looked at Gion in front of her with trepidation, and couldn't understand why her face suddenly became so ugly after mentioning Rock's name. Could it be that this woman also had her underwear and panties stolen by that man? Single quote. Naomi pursed her lips and sighed deeply in her heart. She never thought that she had just escaped from Roche and others. But she immediately fell into the hands of the Navy again. Although they were not pirates, they had done a lot of crazy things under the leadership of Mard Torega in order to pursue the past. The Navy had long regarded them as unwelcome characters. And if those crazy things were investigated, Naomi felt that the Navy might never let them go. It's that man. What about the light column connecting the sky and the earth? Was that also caused by him? Suru, who was sitting next to Gion, glanced at Gion who had lost his composure, and asked Seku P, who was sitting opposite him. Light column. No, that was not caused by Rosie. It was caused by a woman named Nami next to him. Seku P shook his head and said. Thinking of the scene of being hit by the aftermath of the fairy's glory, Seku P felt a little scared. At the same time, he still had a little doubt in his heart. What exactly was that light? The boss was killed in an instant, and I couldn't feel my devil fruit ability. Single quote. Could it be that the light not only has a strong killing power, but also can erase my devil fruit ability? Single quote. Seku P thought to himself. Nami. Crane frowned slightly. According to the eyewitness intelligence of the Navy in Shields Town, there is indeed a woman next to Rosie and Luffy. But according to their description, that woman should be an ordinary woman without power. Can she use such power? Although Crane was far away from the battlefield where Nami performed the fairy's glory before. But her observation Haki can still feel the danger of the light column. It can be said that even some vice admirals of the Navy headquarters may suffer serious injuries when facing that light column. Ordinary woman. No, that woman is not an ordinary woman. She can summon lightning, fire and other powers with the strange power of a hand of cards. She even fought back and forth with these powers with the boss. And her last light column killed the boss, and even my ability. How could such a woman be an ordinary woman? Seku P slapped his hands on the table and stood up hoarsely. At this moment, the emotions that were almost taken away by the glow of the fairy burst out instantly. Crane put his hands under his chin and looked at Sekupi quietly. She continued to speak only after Sekupi calmed down a little. It seems that there are some errors in the information from Shields Town. That woman not only has power, but also has quite dangerous power. Sekupi, you just said what she did to your ability, can you tell me more specifically? Crane knocked on the table and said, okay. Sekupi sat down again and nodded slightly. Although Crane's performance has always been very calm, Sekupi inexplicably dared not look her in the eye. Soon, he told her about the impact of the blow of the fairy, and the loss of the ability of the devil fruit after waking up. Impossible. In this world, if a devil fruit user's ability is to disappear, it must be after his death. Even if that woman named Nami can cast that dangerous beam just now, she definitely does not have the ability to erase a person's ability. Sekupi, I hope you don't lie about not being able to withstand the test, otherwise, based on what you have done, we can also send you to jail. Gion frowned and looked at Sekupi with a bad face. I'm telling the truth. I really can't feel my ability. By the way, since you are the Navy, you must have seastone handcuffs. You can use seastone handcuffs to test me. I really didn't lie. Sekupi panicked and wanted to explain. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life in a cell. Chapter 31. Having said that, if a person is not a devil fruit user himself, you can't test anything with sea-floor stone handcuffs. Gion shook his head and directly rejected Sekupi's proposal. Well, can I say something? At this time, Naomi carefully raised her hand. After Gion and Suru looked over, she said carefully, Sekupi didn't lie. He is really a devil fruit user, and he is also a color fruit user that allows us to conduct secret voyages. If you suspect that we are lying, you can go find our remaining partners. Now that we are being interrogated by you alone, we have no chance to communicate with them. Hearing this, he nodded and looked back at a female sailor behind him. The female sailor immediately understood, saluted with a military salute and walked out. Let's not talk about your devil fruit abilities for now, let's continue talking about Rossi. Naomi, right, when you mentioned Rossi earlier, your expression was obviously strange. Did that man do something to you? Gion's eyes were fixed on Naomi's, and his tone sounded extremely serious at this moment. Did that man do something to you? Single quote. Naomi complained in her mind, feeling more and more that Rossi also used the stealing skill on Gion. But under the roof, she didn't dare to really say what was in her heart. After all, anyone with a discerning eye can see that Gion is not in a good mood at the moment. It's actually not a big deal. It's just what? It's just that man used some kind of strange ability to steal something from me. Have your things stolen, treasures, weapons, really, don't let me say it clearly. Naomi glanced at Gion with a resentful look. In her opinion, if Gion had experienced the same thing as herself, then she should know what she is talking about. Isn't it just underwear and underwear, as well as a bow and arrow? What's not to say? Speaking of which, Naomi, you didn't play your role at all in the previous battle. If you didn't lose your mind because your clothes were stolen, maybe your weapons wouldn't have been stolen either. If you can make good use of your role as a sniper, maybe we won't lose our boss. As a sniper, it happens that weapons are taken away and used by the enemy. If I were you, I would have no shame to live in this world now. At this time, Sekupi suddenly spoke. Steal private clothing. Gion turned his head sharply to look at Sekupi. In just 1 second, she had already thought of a series of erotic dramas in her mind. She even glanced at Naomi's thighs, wanting to see if she also had the word on her legs. Idiot Sekupi, what are you talking about? Naomi immediately blushed, stood up, pointed at her partner and shouted. You have also seen the strength of that guy. He is a man who can easily take the boss's punch and kick him away easily. And his stealing ability is too weird. What can I do? Can you imagine having something on your body suddenly disappear? If you were asked to deal with him, would you have any idea? Speaking of which, if your invisibility could work on him from the beginning, we might be able to defeat them quietly from the beginning. Hearing this, Sekupi's forehead popped with veins, and he immediately wanted to get up and argue with Naomi. Okay, please be quiet. Guion slapped the interrogation table and stood up from his position, staring straight at Naomi. You, come out with me. I have something I want to talk to you about alone. Shall. After saying that, Guion turned around and left the interrogation room without giving Naomi a chance to reply. Explain. Naomi blinked and looked down at Crane, who was sitting on the chair. Group. Okay, go ahead. He waved his hand. As for you, Sekou-P, let's continue talking. After receiving Haru's permission, Naomi glared at Sekou-P, quickly left the interrogation room, and followed Guion to an empty room. But before Guion could ask, Naomi couldn't help but ask first. Well, Miss Navy, maybe it's my misunderstanding, but I still want to figure out one thing. You seem to be very familiar with that Luo Qi. Could it be that you have encountered the same thing as me? Hearing this, Guion's brows frowned. After staring at Naomi's face for a long time, she said, You don't have to worry about my affairs. I'm asking you, has that man done anything excessive to you? Of course, as I said just now, he stole my clothes. I'm not talking about this, I just want to ask him if he has done anything more extreme to you. More outrageous. Wait, did he do something more outrageous to you, Miss Navy, than me? Naomi, I'm asking you about something now, don't involve me. I ask, you answer, do you understand? Obviously, understand. Well, in fact, apart from stealing my weapons and clothes, he didn't do anything excessive to me. He just used a strange ability to suck away my physical strength, and then I fainted. Naomi, who was startled by Guion's eyes, trembled and quickly told everything about Razi. Is there really nothing else? Guion frowned. It's really gone. Naomi shook her head. Besides, you can ask my partners about other things. You guys have already caught me after I woke up. Guion breathed out and his eyes moved down to Naomi's tight thighs wrapped in leather pants. You, take off your leather pants. After thinking about it, Guion finally wanted to verify it with his own eyes. After all, it is not impossible for Razi to do something that Naomi didn't know about after she fainted. Wah, what? Naomi felt as if she was hallucinating, and looked at Guion in front of her with some confusion. I said, take off your leather pants. This, that, I am a normal woman, I prefer men. I don't care if you like a man or a woman, just tell me whether you want to take it off or not. If not, I'll help you. Knowing that he had been misunderstood, Guion glared at Naomi, raised his hand and pulled out the long knife from his waist, as if he wanted to do it himself. No, can't I take it off? Naomi pursed her lips, blushing and followed Guion's order. Am I really going to be raped by a woman? Single quote. How could there be such an unruly Navy woman in the Navy? Single quote. Naomi screamed in her heart, a strong sense of shame welling up in her heart. She even felt that instead of being defiled by the woman in front of her, it would be better to let the fool who stole her clothes do these things. At least, that's a real man. No. Just when Naomi closed her eyes, preparing to face her destiny, Guion's surprised voice sounded in her ears. What's not there? Naomi opened her eyes and saw Guion's eyes constantly passing over her legs. It's nothing, you can leave. Guion touched his temples as if he had a headache, turned and left the room. Naomi stared at Guion's back and fell into confusion again. No, this is the end. Are you playing with me? Let me leave, but give me a boat. On the sea, a naval warship was sailing quickly into the wind. Inside the cabin, Guion was walking down the aisle with a frown on his face. Did you see what you wanted to see, Guion? Suddenly, the Crane's voice rang out. Sister he. Guion raised his head and realized that Crane was standing 2 meters away from him. Looking at you, it seems like you didn't find anything on that woman. Crane walked up to Guion, patted her shoulder, and continued. Sekou-P's words have been confirmed. He is indeed a devil fruit user. Now his ability has indeed disappeared. It's very possible that the woman named Nami has the ability to erase devil fruit. Hearing this, Guion looked surprised and followed Crane's footsteps towards the deck of the Navy warship. Sister he, is there really such a strange ability in this world? Is that Nami a user with some kind of extremely special fruit ability? It's not impossible, Guion. But even without this special ability, Nami is dangerous enough to Donghai. Since she is with Luoqi, we need to put a reward on her. Quote. But Sister He, according to the information we got in Shields Town, this woman named Nami seems to be a navigator hired by Rossi with money. She may not be Rossi's partner, nor is she a Straw Hat, a member of the pirate group. Even so, it is a definite fact that she sneaked into the naval base in Shields Town and stole the property inside. But these are the reasons why a reward should be placed on her. Suru handed a portrait in his hand to Gion's hand and continued. Now that she still has the power to hurt the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters, and she is suspected of having the means to erase Devil Fruit, we must pay attention to her. Even though she may only be employed, it does not prevent us from defining her as a member of the Straw Hat Pirates. The Navy does not have any photos of Nami. What you have is a portrait of Nami made by Sekou P based on his own impressions. That guy turned out to be a user with color fruit ability, so the portrait he made must not be much different from the person he is. Through the descriptions of those treasure hunters, the pirate hunter Sauron also has considerable power. Take this opportunity to put a bounty on all of them. Gion picked up the portrait in his hand and frowned even more. Is this really what Nami looks like? No wonder Gion was confused. It was because Sekou P's paintings were too impressionistic and full of artistic sense, which were very different from the photos. Now that there is no photo of Nami, I can only use this image as a substitute. If we can catch up with Luffy, Luoqi and his friends later, we won't need this portrait anymore. He smiled and stopped in front of a female marine. While she and Gion were talking, they had already arrived on the deck of the Navy warship. How about it? Have you seen the boat that Rossi, Luffy and others are riding on? Crane asked the female marine. Reporting to Lieutenant General He, we have searched with all our strength, but we have not found any trace of Luoqi and others. Weird, they were only in a small boat. Logically speaking, we should have found some clues about them after chasing them for such a long time. Lieutenant General He, could it be that we are going in the wrong direction, or are those treasure hunters pointing us in the wrong direction? Is it the wrong direction? Could it be that Luoqi noticed us and deliberately changed the direction? He held up his chin with one hand. The Navy warship did pursue the course according to the previous course of Rossi and others. This was a clue provided by the treasure hunter. But after the battle between Luoqi and his party and the treasure hunters ended, all the treasure hunters were either dead or fainted, and no one saw the direction in which Luoqi and his team finally left. He understood that if Luoqi really felt that they were pursuing them, it would indeed be possible to change their course. However, what she didn't expect was that Rossi didn't change the course. It was just replaced by the Golden Deer, which sailed faster than a naval warship. What a cunning little devil. Marine, turn the ship's bow and let's search in other directions. Yes, Lieutenant General He. The female sailor saluted with a military salute and immediately ran off to carry out He's order. After the female sailor walked away, he slowly took out a phone from his arms and dialed the number. Sengoku, it's me. I have some latest information about Rossi and the Straw Hat Pirates that I need to talk to you about. By the way, has Garp reached the East China Sea now? Luoqi was not aware of the movements of Gion, Suru and others, and was also not interested. After controlling the Golden Deer for a period of time, he took the Golden Deer back. A group of people continued sailing towards Zailuobu village in a small boat. Rossi, isn't Nami awake yet? Luffy watched Rossi help Nami to lie down in a spacious place, and couldn't help but look over worriedly. I already told you, it's okay. The power of Fairy's glory is too strong, far beyond what Nami can master now. The price of forced use is nothing but sleepiness, which is a very lucky thing. Luoqi waved his hand and said casually. In her opinion, Nami couldn't wake up without sleeping for a long time. The glory of fairies, it's such a powerful secret. I wonder when I will be able to master the secret of Black Death Mo. Zoro shook his head, determined to train even more crazily in the future. Speaking of which, Rossi, is there really no problem with us keeping the color fruit user alive? Although I am not a devil fruit user, I know how terrifying it is to be able to take away the power of another person's devil fruit. You said before that the Navy is chasing us. If the color fruit user falls into the hands of the Navy, it will be very detrimental to you and us. Zoro said. What, Zoro, are you afraid? Luoqi smiled. Rossi, you understand that's not what I meant. Zoro looked serious and looked at Rocky meticulously. You are really strict, Zoro. Razi shrugged, sat down next to Nami, and said leisurely. I am a vicious criminal wanted by the Navy and the world government. It is being pursued by both the Navy and the world government. Even if the ability to take away devil fruit abilities is exposed, the Navy and the world government may not be able to deploy more manpower to pursue me. What's more, I am still getting stronger now, and my partners, you, are also getting stronger. I think if I am really in danger, my reliable partner will protect me. As he said that, Rossi looked at Zoro and Luffy in front of him with a smile. Luffy, of course, I will beat away all the enemies who want to capture you. Zoro, Tisk, with your strength you shouldn't need my protection. Forget it, if you really need my power, my sword will help you. You two are really reliable. Luo Chi smiled and said seriously, and if I really want to kill that guy, will you support me? Luffy, it doesn't matter if you kill the enemy during the battle. The battle is over, so there should be no need to kill them. Zoro, I have no interest in attacking those who have lost their will to fight. Rossi smiled, this was exactly the same answer he thought of. That's enough conversation, let's get on with our sailing. As he spoke, Luo Chi opened the sails and let the sea breeze speed up the ship. At the same time, the news bird carrying the bounty order of the Straw Hat Pirates flew into the sky, announcing the existence of Luffy, Zoro, Nami and others to the world. Dragon Park. These are for this month. Thank you for coming here, Colonel Mouse. Captain Along of the Dragon Pirates handed a stack of berry banknotes to Colonel Mouse and said calmly. It's not hard, it's a pleasure to cooperate, Mr. Along. The wretched-looking Colonel Mouse touched the berry banknotes with his fingers, and a smile immediately appeared on his face. But soon, as if he had thought of something, he looked up in the direction of Along. Aaron, you said before that I would wait for the right time and find an excuse to take away the treasure hidden by Nami, right? Yes, is there any problem with this, Colonel Mouse? That's not a problem, but the name of Nami makes me a little confused. In fact, not long ago, a new pirate group emerged in the East China Sea. I got a new bounty order for them. Really, could it be that Nami also appeared in this pirate group and received a bounty, ha ha ha. Yes, and she was rewarded with 25 million berries. After Colonel Mouse finished speaking, Arlong's laughter paused for a moment, but soon a more arrogant sound came out of his mouth. Not only Arlong, but other members of the Arlong pirate group also laughed out loud. Ha ha ha, 25 million berries, it's actually higher than the bounty offered by Brother Arlong. Did the Navy make a mistake? How could that Nami have such a high bounty? I think it's not that Nami has such a high bounty, but the Nami on whom the bounty is offered is someone else, ha ha ha. That's right, that's what I think too. Our Nami is so weak, how could she have a bounty of 25 million? If you say that Nami sneaked into a certain pirate group and happened to be offered a bounty, I would believe it, but I would never believe that she was offered such a bounty of so many berries. Colonel Mouse glanced awkwardly at the laughing fishmen around him, thought about it, and still didn't take out Nami's bounty order. However, he didn't plan to take it, but Arlong's interest was aroused. 25 million berries, what a super rookie pirate. This Nami should be the captain of the pirate group. Colonel Mouse, why don't you let me see how her face looks? Aaron said. Actually, she's not the captain of the pirate ship. Colonel Mouse smiled awkwardly and stretched out his hand to put Nami's bounty in front of Arlong. Wow, a bounty of 25 million, but she's not even the captain yet. This new pirate group is quite motivated. Arlong took Nami's bounty and looked at her avatar. What do you think, Arlong? Is she the Nami we're familiar with? The leader of the pirate group, Kruby, who offered a bounty of 9 million berries, came over. Hey, she looks completely different from Nami. Arlong casually spread out the bounty, and what Kruby saw was a completely abstract version of Nami, which was not even a little bit different from the real Nami. It's true, the calm Kruby didn't say much, and simply exchanged Nami's bounty with Colonel Mouse. Hee, it's good that she's not the captain, it's good that she's not the captain. Colonel Mouse smiled happily. As long as the person he was going to deal with next was not Nami, who was specially warned by the Navy headquarters to have extremely dangerous abilities, he felt it was enough. Mr. Aaron, if there is nothing else, I will leave first. Colonel Mouse wanted to get up and leave. Wait, you just said that Nami is not the captain, so how much berry did their captain offer for the reward? Kruby asked. Unlike Eren, although he also looked down on humans, he was not as arrogant as Eren. He instinctively wanted to know more about the dangerous people who might exist in the East China Sea. Mr. Kruby, this is a rookie pirate group. There are only 4 people in the whole group now. In addition to Nami, there is a swordsman with a bounty of 20 million berries. And their captain, Straw Hat Luffy, has a bounty of 30 million berries. Colonel Mouse said as he took the bounty orders for Zoro and Luffy from his hands and placed them in front of Arlong. That's all. Kruby just took a look and planned to leave. Although Luffy and Nami's bounties were higher than Arlong's, Kruby knew that this was only because their pirate group was dormant in this corner of the East China Sea. If they really let go and make trouble, not only Arlong, but also the cadres of the dragon pirates will have a good bounty. With the strength of your dragon pirates, you naturally look down on Luffy and others, but one of them still needs to be paid attention to. Colonel Mouse smiled embarrassedly and handed over the last bounty order. Arlong looked up, and the next moment his originally calm expression turned into surprise. 800 million berries. Are you kidding me? How could the East China Sea have a man with such a high bounty? Wait, the man with a bounty of 800 million berries is not the captain of this pirate group. Colonel Mouse, are you lying to me? Arlong frowned and looked at Colonel Mouse fiercely. You misunderstood, Eren. It's because this man is too special. He joined the pirate group called Luffy with the bounty he already had. It's also because of this reason that the bounties of Luffy and Zoro are relatively high. Colonel Mouse said hurriedly. What a joke, a pirate with 800 million berries will join a new pirate group. Another cadre, Ju, came over with his hands in his pockets, and looked at Colonel Mouse with dissatisfaction. He felt that Colonel Mouse was completely teasing them at this moment. A bounty of 800 million berries, is it a pirate who returned to the East China Sea from the New World, Colonel Mouse? Arlong waved his hand at Ju and asked Colonel Mouse. Yes, indeed, I won't hide it from you. In fact, this person once killed a celestial dragon. Colonel Mouse wiped the sweat from his forehead and gave his answer. Kill the celestial dragon. Eren's eyes widened, and his whole body jumped up from his seat. No, that's right. Anyway, this man is extremely dangerous. If you meet him, you must be careful. I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. Colonel Mouse, who was shrouded in Arlong's shadow, took 2 steps back and quickly left the Dragon Park with the Navy soldiers. The atmosphere of the Dragon Park at the moment really made him feel a little uncomfortable. Eren glanced at Colonel Mouse's back, then looked at Rossi's bounty order, and his brows furrowed more and more. Killed the celestial dragon, but came to the weakest East China Sea again, and joined a new pirate group. Does this guy want to pursue a stable life like me? Shaking his head, Arlong, who couldn't figure it out, threw the bounty order to the side and continued to lie down on his chair. Anyway, the so-called Rosie with a bounty of 800 million berries had nothing to do with him, and he didn't have to worry about anything. At the same time, on the other side, Nokigo of Kokoja village also looked at Nami's bounty order and fell into deep thought. This shouldn't be Nami herself, right? Same name. Nokigo murmured. Zailuobu village, port, no mistake, those people are pirates, and they are pirates with a bounty of tens of millions. Straw Hat Luffy with 30 million berries, pirate hunter Zoro with 20 million berries, and that man, a super pirate with a bounty of 800 million berries. Strange, where is the little thief cat? Why can't I see the little thief cat Nami with a bounty of 25 million berries? Could it be the woman next to them? But the portrait on this bounty order doesn't look like her at all. Stupid, is it time to care about these now? These dangerous pirates will definitely endanger our village if they land. Then, what should we do? Go find Captain Usopp, he will definitely have a way. In the bushes, 3 children holding several bounty orders trembled as they looked at Luffy and his group walking slowly along the road towards the village. Without Usopp's help, they decisively chose to retreat and ran towards the village. They didn't know that their poor hiding method was exposed to the eyes of Rossi, Zoro and others from the beginning. Even their conversation was heard clearly. Reward, reward, did those brats say something wrong? When did I get a reward of 25 million berries? Nami looked at Rosie in a daze. Am I already getting a reward of 30 million berries? Luffy was shocked. Tisk, 20 million berries. It's 5 million less than Nami's. Zoro smacked his lips and looked at Nami unconvinced. Asshole, I don't want a higher reward than you. If possible, I hope I don't get a reward of even 1 berry. Rosie, let's catch up with those kids. I have something to ask them. Nami held Rosie's hand, looking like she wanted to catch up right now. What's the matter, Nami? Given your previous performance of defeating the treasure hunter boss, it's normal to be offered a bounty of 25 million berries. Okay, let's go now. Seeing Nami's expression of wanting to cry, Rosie shook his head helplessly, and took Nami, Luffy, and Zoro to quickly chase after Usopp's 3 children. Rosie was not surprised that Nami would be offered a bounty. As long as there are still people among those treasure hunters, Nami's deeds of using the fairy's glory will be revealed. With such power, and mixed with a vicious criminal with a bounty of 800 million berries, being offered a bounty of 25 million berries is considered light. Rosie even felt that if it weren't for the bounty of Captain Luffy stuck here, Nami's bounty would be higher. After all, under normal circumstances, the bounty of a crew member cannot be higher than that of the captain. As for himself, he is a special case. Who told him that he had been offered a bounty of 800 million berries by the Navy and the world government before he became a member of the Straw Hat Pirates? Rossi and his group followed Usopp's 3 little followers for a short distance before they saw the 3 little followers and the long-nosed Usopp bump into each other and stop. Seeing this, Luochi and the others were not in a hurry and walked over slowly. But what surprised Rossi was that he actually saw the Black Cat Pirate's Zango next to Usopp. It seems that Usopp can still chat with Zhangao Ting. It looks like someone is looking for you, so I'll leave first. Thank you for showing me the way. Zhangao returned to the country and looked at the 3 little ones, thanked Usopp, and walked away. Usopp waved to Zhangao, turned around and looked at the 3 children running towards him. Onions, green peppers, carrots, what's wrong with you? What happened to make you so anxious? Usopp asked. You, Captain Usopp. No, it's not good, pirates are attacking. Onion put his hands on his knees and said breathlessly. Pirate, hey, are you lying to me? Usopp put his hands on his hips and looked like I've seen through you all. It's not a lie. Carrot Head raised a stack of bounty orders and handed them to Usopp. Captain, the people here are the people on these bounty orders. Usopp looked down at Luffy's bounty order at the top of a stack of bounty orders, and his brows gradually furrowed. Because it was a bounty order included in the latest newspaper, Usopp knew all about this stack of bounty orders. Naturally, we also know what kind of bounty the pirates corresponding to these bounty orders have. Carrot Top, how do I teach you normally? This is not a joke. The lowest reward these guys have is 20 million belly. If these people really come to our village will be completely destroyed. With that said, Usopp planned to scold the 3 onions with his eyes. But right here, a strange voice appeared behind Usopp. It's really Luffy's reward order. When was this photo taken? Usopp's body trembled and he quickly turned around. His sight was Zero Rossi, who used shaving to quickly move behind Usopp. You are. Usopp's eyes widened. He quickly took the bounty order from Carrot Head and turned to the column of Rosie's bounty order. R.O. Luochi, the big pirate with a bounty of 800 million berries, is it really you? Usopp wiped his eyes hard and kept comparing Rossi's face with the photo on Rossi's bounty order. No need to look, I am Luochi. Before Usopp could react, Rossi took all the bounty orders in his hand and looked through them one by one. Monkey D. Luffy has a bounty of 30 million berry, regardless of life or death. Nanaro Azoro has a bounty of 20 million belly on his head, whether he lives or lives. Nami. What's going on with this photo? When he saw Nami's reward order, Luochi couldn't help but be stunned. Razi, is there no reward for mine? Hearing Razi suddenly stop, Nami immediately became happy. When Usopp and Sanshao heard Nami's figure behind them, their bodies trembled. They stiffened their necks and looked behind them, finding Luffy, Zoro and Nami walking side by side. At this moment, Usopp almost fainted from his eyes. One Razi is scary enough, and now there are 3 more. Although one of them doesn't seem very similar to Nami on the bounty order. Well, the situation is a bit complicated. Luo Qi looked at the photo on Nami's reward order, and then at Nami herself, and didn't know how to express it for a moment. Forget it, you better see for yourselves. After saying that, Rossi handed 3 reward orders to Nami, Zoro and Luffy respectively. Hehe, is this my reward order? It's great. I didn't expect that the reward for me would be 30 million berries so soon. Luffy roared happily and even started doing a weird dance on the spot. 20 million belly is not bad. I wonder if the Navy will give me the 20 million if I give myself to the Navy. Zoro's lips cracked and he even began to think about how to use his bounty to buy drinks. As for Nami, she was in sharp contrast to Luffy and Zoro. She stayed in place looking at her bounty order in her hand. Luo Qi was not surprised by Nami's expression. After all, even he himself was distracted for a moment when he saw the reward notice. Not to mention Nami herself. By the way, where do you guys want to go? Rossi put his hand on the shoulder of Usopp, who was walking towards the distance on his tiptoes, and said with a smile on his face. The captain has been caught and is going to be killed. Onion, carrot, and green pepper glanced at Usopp and Rossi, then quickly fled the scene, screaming. That speed made Usopp open his mouth instantly. Haha, that's really interesting, don't you think so, Mr. Long-Nosed? Luo Qi smiled. That's quite interesting. I'm still making soup at home. If everything's okay, can I leave first? Usopp gave Rossi a smile that was uglier than bitter. You guess. The corners of Luo Qi's mouth raised, revealing his white teeth. I can tell you that I am the great Captain Usopp with tens of thousands of men. If you mess with me, my little brothers will definitely not let you go. Usopp's legs were trembling, and he mustered up the courage to speak to Rossi. At the same time, he prayed in his heart that he could scare Rossi in this way. It's just that Rossi, who already knew Usopp's personality, could be frightened. Really? Then you were really awesome, Captain Usopp. It just so happens that it's been a while since the last time I killed a large number of people. I wonder if Captain Usopp can call your tens of thousands of men here so that I can vent my desire for massacre. The corners of Luo Qi's mouth were split open, deliberately showing a ferocious look. As soon as these words came out, Usopp's legs immediately softened and his body automatically slid to the ground. Rossi, have you ever killed so many people? At this time, Luffy finally recovered from the excitement of seeing his bounty. Hearing the conversation between Usopp and Rossi, he immediately looked over curiously. Idiot, of course it's fake. I just saw this long nose lying, so I planned to tease him. Luo Qi waved his hand and said. Although after coming to the pirate world, his hands were indeed stained with the blood of many people, but he was still far away from tens of thousands of people. What? It turned out to be a lie. No, you lied, but I didn't lie. Usopp stood up and immediately looked confident. It was as if his extremely scared look just now was fake. Hehehe, you are so interesting. Luffy came over, and after taking a look at Usopp's long nose, he continued. Your name is Usopp, right? No. That's right. It seems that the name of my great Captain Usopp has also spread to the outer seas. Usopp crossed his arms and continued to pretend. Didn't you reveal your name just now? Zoro glanced at Usopp, a little speechless at Usopp's performance. Hehe, you are really interesting. And you look a lot like Jesus. Luffy smiled. Jesus cloth, you know my father. Usopp's eyes widened. Of course I know, Jesus you once came to my hometown with Shanks. Speaking of the past, Luffy immediately started chatting. After Usopp communicated with Luffy, he gradually stopped worrying about the bounty issue of Rossi and his party, and even took the initiative to ask about Luffy and his party. I didn't expect Luffy to meet the son of an acquaintance here. Zoro sighed and turned to look at Nami, who was still silent. Nami, are you still worried about your bounty? If you are really worried about being wanted because of the bounty issue, instead of worrying about this and that, you might as well hone your heroic spirit template. As Zoro spoke, he stretched his head to look at the reward order in Nami's hand. Is this photo of you? Did the Navy make a mistake? Zoro said doubtfully after seeing the photo on Nami's wanted poster. What? There's something wrong with Nami's reward order. When Luffy heard Zoro's words, he almost jumped to the back of Nami. What's the problem? Doesn't this photo look exactly like Nami? As soon as these words were spoken, Nami, who had been in a daze, suddenly regained consciousness and hit Luffy on the head with her fist. Idiot Luffy, how are you like me? Am I as ugly as the photos depict? It hurts. What are you doing, Nami? The photo looks just like you. You guys think so, Zoro and Rossi. In response to Luffy's question, Rossi and Zoro waved their hands. Look, both Luochi and Luffy said that the photo on the wanted poster is different from mine. Really, it's exactly what Luochi said. Luffy, you are face blind. What's going on with the Navy? It's okay to put a reward on me. Why does the portrait on the reward order look like this? Nami lowered her head and let out a long sigh. I think the style of the portrait on Nami's wanted poster is somewhat similar to the painting style of the color fruit ability user we met earlier. Maybe Nami, your portrait was drawn by him based on his own thoughts. You are different from us. Luffy and Zoro both performed well at the previous naval base. The Navy will most likely take photos of them both. And you don't have a ready-made photo, so the Navy who chased me to the battlefield between us and the treasure hunter must have adopted the work of the color fruit user. Rather than this, I'm more curious about why your reward order says, only capture alive. As he spoke, Rosie pointed his finger at the text below Nami's bounty order portrait. Indeed, our bounties are all for life or death. Nami, do you have any idea about this? Zoro asked. This, I don't know either. Could it be that the Navy thinks I'm cute, so they only capture people alive? Nami tilted her head, stuck out her tongue and put on a cute expression. Will the Navy really only capture people alive just because they look cute? By the way, the portrait on your bounty order is not cute, right? At this time, Usopp also came over. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he was hit head-on by Nami, and in just a moment, a big bump appeared on his head. Could it be because of the fairy's glory that Nami used at the end? Single quote. No, that's not right. The Navy would not issue a bounty order to capture only living people because of a powerful trick. Single quote. What on earth are those guys in the Navy, that woman Crane, thinking? Single quote. Roche held his chin with one hand, thinking for a long time but couldn't come up with a result, so he had to give up. Now he could not imagine that the Navy actually mistakenly thought that Nami had the ability to erase other people's devil fruits, and wanted to study this ability, so they issued a bounty order to Nami to only catch her alive. If he knew, Roche would probably laugh at Nami who took the blame for him. Let's talk about the bounty order later. Compared to this, is it really okay for you to stay here, Usopp? Although we pirates just came here to find a big enough pirate ship, we have no intention of attacking this village. But the person who just chatted with you may not be the same. Roche patted Usopp on the shoulder and said with a smile. The one just now, is there anything wrong with him? Usopp raised his head and looked at Roche in confusion. Rosie, that man is the current captain of the Black Cat Pirates, Django. I wonder if my answer will satisfy you. Usopp, Captain Django of the Black Cat Pirates. How is that possible? Isn't that a strange hypnotist? Zoro, Hypnotist Django. That's the man you mentioned in Shield's Town earlier, Rosie. That guy does look very similar to Django on the wanted poster. Usopp's eyes widened and he turned to look in the direction Django left. The next moment, he ran out in the direction Django left. It seems very interesting, Luffy. Should we catch up and see? Rosie turned his head and looked at Luffy and asked. But he saw Luffy holding his stomach with both hands, and his stomach was still making a gurgling sound. Forget it, let's go to the restaurant. Xylubu Village, restaurant. No way, are those two guys still human? How much food have they eaten? No, I don't know, but I think the chef of this restaurant may have collapsed. Don't talk about the chef, I'm going to collapse. When will the dishes we ordered be delivered? The diners looked at the table of guests in the corner in shock. They were all surprised by the appetite of the two people at the table. And these two people are naturally Luffy and Rosie. Really, Luffy is fine, but why can you eat so much, Rosie? How much berries does this meal cost? Nami slapped her forehead, looking helpless. There's nothing we can do about it. Although Rosie is not a rubber fruit user, he also has a cell demon, so it's normal for him to eat. Zoro put down the wine glass in his hand and said indifferently. For him, as long as there is enough wine, nothing else is a problem. But he eats too much. How can we store food at sea in the future? Obviously, Roche didn't eat much at sea. Nami sighed deeply. That's because I'm controlling my appetite. After all, I don't want us to be short of food during our voyage. Roche put down the chopsticks in his hand and wiped off the grease elegantly. Also, Nami, you don't have to worry about the problem of berries. Didn't we snatch some berries from those treasure hunters before? That's enough for us to eat and drink for a long time. Hearing what Rosie said, Nami immediately pouted and looked at Rosie. Shouldn't we use the berry in your suitcase to pay? Why should we use my private money to pay? Nami, don't think of deducting the berry we snatched together. But the food expenses for you and Luffy are too high, and Zoro's alcohol expenses are also very high. Otherwise, Rosie, you will give me the berry you snatched for safekeeping, and I will make a reasonable distribution. Want to be a fund manager? Forget it, it's up to you. Rosie waved his hand casually and turned to look at Luffy. Luffy, what do you think of my proposal just now? Proposal? What proposal? Really, are you only concerned about food? I mean to let that Usopp join our pirate group and serve as our sniper. So that's it. Since Usopp is Jesus' son, and he looks quite interesting, it's not impossible to let him join the pirate group. But, is he suitable to be our sniper? Luffy scratched the back of his head and asked in confusion. While dining in the restaurant, Luffy and others had learned about their general impression of Usopp from the surrounding diners and restaurant staff. This made Luffy not hate Usopp, but rather like him a little. However, the father's strong sniping skills do not mean that the son's sniping skills are strong. Before seeing Usopp's sniping ability, even Luffy had doubts about whether Usopp was suitable for the position of the pirate group's sniper. You don't have to worry about this, just like Zoro will eventually become one of the strongest swordsmen in the future. Usopp will definitely become one of the best snipers in the world in the future. Roche raised his thumb and smiled. Usopp in the original work has extraordinary potential in sniping, plus the heroic spirit template he will inherit in the future. Roche doesn't believe that he can train him to be the best sniper in the world. Okay, since you said so, Roche, let's let Usopp be our sniper, ha 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 ha. Out of trust in Roche, Luffy made a decision directly, picked up the big bone and laughed. And his laughter also attracted the attention of the diners around. They pointed at Luffy one after another. At this moment, Rock's outstanding perception keenly felt the footsteps coming from far to near outside the door. It was not someone else, but Usopp's footsteps. Here we come, Roche said casually, and the door of the restaurant was pushed open. Usopp appeared at the gate with an extremely anxious figure. Everyone, something bad has happened. The Black Cat pirates are about to invade this village, everyone should get ready. As soon as Usopp entered the restaurant, he shouted to the diners around him. However, he was responded with angry and disgusted voices. No one believed what Usopp said. Of course, because they came to the restaurant first and heard the descriptions of Usopp by the diners around them. Nami, Zoro and others knew that the villagers around them did not really dislike Usopp. Why don't you believe me? Usopp's mood instantly dropped when he saw the performance of the people around him. That's because you have performed, pirates are coming, too many times. It's normal for everyone not to believe it. How about it, do you want to talk, Usopp? Rosie walked to Usopp, raised his hand and put it on his shoulder and said. After that, he pulled Usopp out of the restaurant without saying anything and walked towards a deserted place. Luffy, Zoro and Nami followed closely behind. What, let me be your partner? Usopp's eyes widened, looking at Luffy who invited him in great surprise. Hehe, that's right, you can be our sniper, Usopp. Just like Jesus was Shank's sniper. Aren't you worried that Zangao will attack your hometown? As long as you become one of us, you will be our partner. As a partner, we also have reason to protect your hometown. Luffy patted Usopp's shoulder heavily and laughed happily. At the same time, Zoro, who was standing aside, had a strong sense of déjà vu. Not long ago, wasn't he half forced and half induced by Luffy and Rossi in front of him to join the pirate group? Although he doesn't regret becoming a member of the Straw Hat Pirates now. Usopp stared at Luffy in front of him in a daze, and didn't react for a long time. They actually invited me to be their partner. Is it possible that my charm has reached this level? But if they are really willing to help, they can definitely defeat the Black Cat pirates and that crow hiding in Kaya's house. Usopp lowered his head and muttered in a low voice, and gradually his heart was more and more inclined to become a member of the Straw Hat Pirates. The villagers said that you often play the role of a pirate in this village. You should also be very yearning for the sea. Usopp, do you really plan to just play the pirate game for the rest of your life? Rossi's words directly defeated Usopp's last psychological defense and strengthened his determination to go to sea. This is what you said, you will help me resist the Black Cat pirates. By the way, I should be the captain, right? Usopp put his hands on his hips and smiled again on his face. Asshole, I'm the captain. Luffy immediately raised his fist and rejected Usopp's proposal. What a noisy man. Nami spread her hands and sighed. But what should we do next? According to what Usopp said before, it may take some time for the members of the Black Cat pirates to reach this village. Are we going to get rid of Crow hiding in Kia Villa now? Hearing this, Luochi waved his hand and said, according to what Usopp said, that Kia trusts Crow very much. If you go directly to find trouble with Crow, Kia may not believe it. Let him go first, and then deal with him after he shows his weakness in front of Kia. Don't worry, Usopp, I will go and watch Crow myself later and I won't let anything happen to your friend. My reward is dozens of times that of Crow, so there will be no problem. Usopp thought for a moment and quickly agreed to Rossi's proposal. After all, before that, he had gone to Kia to tell him about Crow, but he didn't get a good answer. And with Rossi, who has a bounty of 800 million berries, going to look at Crow, Usopp can indeed rest assured. Then let's go to the entrance of the village and make some preparations. I want to set up some traps to hinder those pirates. Usopp said firmly. Hey, you are really full of energy. It seems that Luochi is right. You are indeed a man who takes action when it's time to take action. Zoro crossed his arms, his tone full of admiration. But soon, Usopp's next words made his face fall. When the traps are set up, the battle will be left to you big pirates. Usopp said expressionlessly. That won't work, you have to fight too. Rossi shook his head and put his hand on Usopp's shoulder. But, I don't have much power. Lack of strength is no reason not to fight. Besides, you may soon have strength. Luochi smiled, raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Usopp felt the space around him shake, and his vision dimmed for a second. When he opened his eyes again, he found that he had arrived in a completely unfamiliar dark space surrounded by nothingness. What kind of place is this? Usopp's panicked voice continued to spread into the distance, and was eventually swallowed up by darkness. It's so amazing. I can actually inherit the power of the heroic spirit here. Is this true, Nami? Usopp's eyes widened and he looked at Nami in surprise as he introduced the function of the heroic spirit space to him. That's right, it's not just you. Before you, Zoro, I, and Luffy have all obtained the template of a heroic spirit through Roach's strange ability. Mine is the template of a magister named Kana, Zoro's is the template of a heroic spirit named Black Death Mo, and Luffy is the template of a super foodie heroic spirit named Uru. At the end of the sentence, Nami seemed a little helpless. It seemed that he was once again reminded of Luffy's bottomless pit-like appetite. Usopp looked at Zoro and Luffy, and they both nodded, confirming Nami's words. Okay Usopp, now that Nami has explained the function of this heroic space to you. Next, it's up to you to make the choice. Rossi waved his hand in front of Usopp, and a translucent science fiction panel appeared in front of everyone. Pinocchio with the long nose attribute, Luo Binghan with the sniper attribute, and looking at the last candidate on the panel, even Luochi couldn't help but twitch his lips. Wow, that's amazing. This person actually has 3 attributes. The king of liar, coward, and brave warrior. What is the meaning of King Luochi? Why does he have 3 attributes? Luffy asked curiously. It's really strange. The words coward and brave are relative, right? Why do they appear in the same person? Nami held her chin with one hand and looked at Luochi with doubts in her heart. Don't look at me like that. There will be 3 attributes on King's body. Most likely it's because he happens to have 3 attributes that overlap with Usopp's 3 attributes. As for the 2 attributes of coward and brave warrior appearing in the same person, it's not a big deal. But no one has ever said that a coward can't become a brave warrior. You're right, Usopp, Roche shrugged and said. Although Roche was puzzled as to why there were 3 attributes on King, he just regarded it as a special manifestation of the system and didn't pay too much attention to it. After all, this King from One Punch Man does have the 3 attributes of coward, big liar, and brave warrior. When facing some crises, King can stand up bravely, which is enough to show his courage. What, I'm not a big liar. And I'm going to be a brave sea warrior in the future, how can I be a coward? Roche, are you wrong about this ability? Usopp waved his hand and looked at Roche and said. Hehe, you know whether you were right or not. Hurry up and choose Usopp, Nami has already told you how to do these things before, right? Roche didn't want to argue with Usopp, and directly urged Usopp to make a choice. Okay. Usopp smacked his lips, his eyes fell on the 3 names on the panel, and he gradually became fascinated. Roche also looked at the names of Pinocchio, Luo Binghen, and King. I didn't expect that this time even the characters in the fairy tale fruit would appear. Single quote. Pinocchio, this character should not have much combat power. Single quote. And King, this guy doesn't seem to have any ability except being able to summon Saitama and having a big heart. Single quote. The only powerful one is this type moon heroic spirit, Luo Binghen. Single quote. I hope Usopp can make a suitable choice, at least I can inherit a useful character. Single quote. Roche sighed in his heart and thought silently. It's decided, let's look at them in order. Let's start with this, long-nosed, Pinocchio. Since he has a long nose like me, he must be an excellent warrior. Usopp rubbed his long nose confidently and raised his hand to press the name of Pinocchio. Accompanied by a tremor in the heroic spirit space, a little boy with the same long nose as Usopp and a body made entirely of wood appeared in front of everyone. Hey, why is it a toy? Usopp leaned down and looked at Pinocchio a few meters away with a puzzled look. The image of Pinocchio is completely different from what Usopp imagined in his mind. Pinocchio is originally a puppet. Of course, he is a living puppet. As for his abilities, they are all on his long nose. As Roche was talking, Pinocchio had already stood up and walked slowly towards the lake in front. All the abilities are in the nose. What kind of abilities are they? Is it the same type of power as Alu's powerful sense of smell? Luffy asked curiously. No, let me put it this way, Pinocchio's long nose can stretch and shrink freely. When Pinocchio lies, his nose will grow longer. When he tells the truth, his nose will shrink. As Rosie was talking, Pinocchio had already come to the lake and began to show his abilities to his reflection in the lake. What kind of strange ability is this? What's the use of a shorter nose? Usopp twitched his mouth, looking at Pinocchio who was switching between lying and not lying, a drop of cold sweat on his forehead. Maybe when you choose Pinocchio's power, you can have an indestructible nose. You can keep your nose growing longer by lying. With your sniper ability, maybe you can use your nose as a bullet. Luffy laughed immediately after hearing Rosie's words. Nami and Zoro standing beside him couldn't help but curl their lips. Usopp was ashamed, whether he could get an indestructible nose or not, just thinking that his nose would expose his thoughts as long as he lied. Usopp felt a sense of rejection of Pinocchio's power. He shook his head, and when Pinocchio's demonstration just ended, he slapped his hand on the name of Sniper, Robin Hood. Forget it, I still don't want Pinocchio's heroic spirit template. Let me see the power of this Robin Hood. With Usopp's solemn speech, the heroic spirit space trembled again. A second later, several people came to a dense forest. What a beautiful forest. Nami turned around and looked around the surrounding environment. But Rosie, why is there no one here? Shouldn't that Robin Hood appear in front of us? After Nami finished speaking, Usopp nodded repeatedly and looked at Rosie in confusion. Just because you can't see him doesn't mean he's not by your side. Nami, Usopp, how about you look behind you? Rosie raised his hand and pointed behind Nami and the others, with a mysterious look on his face. After hearing Rosie's words, the others looked behind them obediently. At this moment, a man wearing a green shirt and a dark green cape suddenly appeared in front of them. Is this Robin Hood? How did he suddenly appear? And the bow in his hand. So, he is an archer. Usopp took a step forward, wanting to take a closer look at the man named Robin Hood. Suddenly appeared. This is somewhat similar to the power called lurking that Sato Kazuma showed before. Captain Rossi, could this man be able to use some kind of invisible power? Nami asked. You guessed right, Nami, Robin Hood does have the power of invisibility. And this power is far beyond the primary lurking that Sato Kazuma has mastered. Did you see the dark green cloak behind him? Don't underestimate that cloak, it can be called the power of Robin Hood's secret. The noble phantasm, the king of facelessness, as long as you put on this cloak, you can eliminate your own breath and enter the invisible state. Sato Kazuma's lurking can easily be detected by the enemy's observation haki. But the invisibility effect brought by this noble phantasm called the king of facelessness cannot be detected by people who have not practiced their observation haki to a certain degree. It can be said that for those with poor perception, as long as you put on the king of facelessness and do not make any sound, even if you stand in front of the enemy, he has no way of knowing your existence. Awesome, it's actually a cloak that can make you invisible. Razi, can this cloak be lent to other people? Without waiting for Usopp to say anything, Luffy looked at Razi excitedly. If you inherit Robin Hood's heroic spirit template, the Faceless King can indeed be lent to other people for use. It's not worth it because the Faceless King is bound to the user, so when other people use it, they can only consume the physical strength of the bound person. And when the user is too far away from the owner of the Faceless King, there is no way to use this treasure. Razi nodded and confirmed Luffy's words. Then Razi, you must have this treasure, right? Can you lend it to me? I refuse. If you really want to use it, you can go to Usopp to borrow it. Of course, the premise is that he is willing to choose Robin Hood. Razi waved his hand and directly rejected Luffy's request. Not to mention that he doesn't have the power of Robin Hood yet. Even if he has the power of Robin Hood, he can't lend the treasure to Luffy for no reason. After all, it's a very tiring job to keep the treasure open. It can block the perception of observation haki to a certain extent. This treasure is really powerful. As a sniper, if you can attack the enemy in stealth, it will be a very dangerous thing for the enemy. It's a pity that when you use the bow to shoot arrows, the arrows that leave the area covered by the Faceless King will show his shape. In this way, the position is equivalent to being exposed. If you use the Faceless King to attack, you need to kill with one shot. Zoro sighed. Who said that the arrow shot will lose the invisible state? Rock's mouth corners raised, glancing at Zoro on the side. Isn't it possible to maintain the invisible state even if the bow is shot? This time, Usopp finally couldn't help asking. After all, it is a power he may inherit, so he is naturally very concerned. Rosie didn't say anything, but just raised his hand and pointed in the direction of Robin Hood. Usopp looked in the direction of Rosie's finger and saw Robin Hood put the hood of his cloak back on his head and entered the invisible state again. Immediately, several sounds of wood breaking sounded out of thin air. Usopp and others turned their heads and found that several dents appeared on the giant tree not far away. After a while, several arrows slowly emerged from the concave parts of the tree. Even arrows can be invisible. This is really a dangerous power. Zoro frowned. Just now, he had no idea how Robin Hood launched the attack. If such an attack was aimed at him, Zoro didn't know if he could dodge it. Robin Hood is a ranger, very good at setting traps and using poisons. If he is given time to prepare, he can even use poisons and traps to cause great damage to the enemy on the battlefield, making it impossible for them to exert their full strength. In addition, Robin Hood has a dangerous treasure, which is the bow of prayer, on his wrist. As Roche finished speaking, a man dressed like a ninja appeared opposite Robin Hood. In the eyes of Usopp and others, the ninja quickly turned his body and waved the kunai in his hand to shoot down several invisible arrows, but even so, one arrow hit his shoulder, and a lot of blood flowed from his shoulder. Robin Hood is good at holding poison, so he can naturally use the bow of prayer to shoot arrows containing poison. Although the poison on these arrows may not be fatal. But if Robin Hood shouts the name of the bow of prayer, he can emit a force that can detonate the filth in the enemy's body, including toxins. After Roche finished speaking, Robin Hood suddenly opened his cloak, revealing his figure. As he called out the name of bow of prayer, a beam of emerald green light shot out from his short bow and shot towards the ninja's heart. Although the ninja dodged quickly, his body was still touched by the beam. The next moment, his body burst directly from the inside like a balloon. After that, a towering tree quickly grew where the emerald green beam landed, and released a strange purple mist that spread around. Unexpectedly, it exploded like this. So scary. Suddenly seeing a person explode in front of him, Usopp's legs couldn't help shaking again. It's really a very scary power. It's just touching the emerald green beam, but it has triggered the power. Although I don't know to what extent that beam can do to the toxins in a person's body. But since it is called the secret and the treasure, I think this power will not be simple. Zoro looked at Roche and said, "At least, if you are hit by this move now, your body will explode directly. Even though you now have some ghost recovery ability. Of course, there is also you, Luffy. Don't think that you will be fine just because your body is made of rubber." Rosie's words made Zoro and Luffy's faces serious at the same time. Being able to hide from the King of No Face, and the emerald green light that will kill anyone who touches it, anyone who is not stupid can realize how terrifying these two powers are when combined. This Robin Hood is so terrifying. If you can master this power, wouldn't you be invincible? Nami said in surprise. Not invincible. Razi shook his head and smiled. If the body is strong enough, it may still be able to withstand the erosion of the toxin. In addition, the Bow of Prayer and the King of Facelessness cannot be used at the same time. If you want to release the true name of the Bow of Prayer, you must remove the invisibility of the King of Facelessness. So Robin Hood can't quietly launch the emerald light. Hearing this, the serious expressions on Zoro and Luffy's faces eased a little. But Rosie's next sentence made the two of them widen their eyes again. Did you see the giant tree that grew? This giant tree also acts as a detonator when it grows. If the enemy touches this tree, the filth in the body will also be detonated. And the purple mist released when this tree withers, I don't need to tell you, you should also understand that it is a highly toxic. If you get infected, it won't be good either, and you may be detonated in another sense. Rosie patted Usopp, who was already dumbfounded, and raised his hand to point to Robin Hood who had already jumped high into the sky. Usopp raised his head and saw Robin Hood shooting an arrow at the purple mist. Boom! The arrow landed, just like dragging a match into the gas, and the entire area covered by the purple mist was caught in a huge explosion. Usopp's forehead began to sweat wildly, and at this moment he understood the meaning of detonation that Roche had just mentioned. Such a terrifying power, can I really control it? The more powerful the ability, the stronger the will and strength required to use it. Both the Bow of Prayer and the King of Facelessness are Robin Hood's trump cards. Even if you choose Robin Hood's heroic spirit template, you may not be able to use these powers at the beginning. And even if you can use them, the time when the King of Facelessness can be used and the power that the Bow of Prayer can exert are directly related to your physical fitness. But you don't have to worry too much. As long as you practice diligently in the future, you will be able to use the heroic spirit template proficiently one day. Roche patted Usopp's shoulder heavily and called him back from his daze. This guy named Robin Hood is really a powerful man. If I can have this power, wouldn't I be able to easily defeat the people of the Black Cat Pirates? And that crow, he must not be my opponent. Usopp clenched his fists. At this moment, his heart was full of confidence. He completely forgot that Roche had said before that the power obtained by using the heroic spirit template is linked to one's original strength. Rosie shook his head and did not disturb Usopp, quietly waiting for him to calm down. In his opinion, Usopp only had Robin Hood as his choice. As for Pinocchio and King, these two were not a good choice. After a while, Usopp finally came to his senses and turned to look at the name of King. 3 attributes, and there is also an attribute called Brave Warrior. Let me see what kind of power you have. As he said that, Usopp raised his hand and pointed at the name of King. The heroic spirit space trembled, and Rosie and others immediately came to a city surrounded by collapsed buildings. What a miserable place. Has there been any war here? Zoro frowned and turned to look around. All he saw was a desolate scene. This place can't be related to King. Hey, is that King? Such a majestic man. Usopp swallowed his saliva, and his excellent eyesight quickly helped him locate a tall man not far away with 3 scars on his face and a very intimidating appearance. He walked to a ruins with a calm expression and slowly took out a box of game discs from the rubble. At this moment, a man in a black suit ran over. He looked at his surroundings and then at King, who had a calm expression on his face, and was suddenly surprised. You are the strong man who defeated the dragon-level monster. Please become a professional hero in the Hero Association, please. The man in a black suit bent at 90 degrees and saluted King directly. King wiped the blood on his face and looked at the man in the suit calmly. A powerful, dong dong dong, sound began to sound from his body. This voice, why do I suddenly feel a little scared? Nami took a step back and stood behind Rozzy unconsciously. Is it the same scar as Shanks' face? And it also has similar pressure to Shanks. This man is not simple. Luffy's eyes darkened, and his expression suddenly became serious. Although Zoro did not speak, his hand was already on the handle of the knife at his waist. As for Usopp, he fell directly to the ground and looked in horror at the king who was being guided forward by the man in the suit. Luochi was a little ashamed. He never expected that King's Imperial engine would be so powerful. It immediately made Luffy, Zoro and others think that King was a powerful man. Obviously King's attribute tag also has 2 attributes, coward, and liar. Just when Rossi felt that he had the obligation to remind Usopp and others, the screen in the heroic spirit space rotated again, and several different screen fragments appeared in succession. Although the clips show different places, each clip has something in common. That is the Broken City and the Majestic King. Seeing these clips, Luffy, Zoro, Nami and others were completely in a state of surprise. Although they didn't see King taking action, just looking at the Broken City, they had already imagined the terrifying battle scene in their minds. The scene changed again, this time appearing in a gloomy street. At this moment, King was walking forward along the passage with a gloomy look on his face. Suddenly, a child appeared behind the king and stopped him. Great, you are the king of the strongest men on earth. Now I'm saved. This place is full of weirdos and I've been scared. King, can I follow you? The little boy said excitedly as he ran towards King. But before he could reach King, the sound of dong 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 resounded in the passage. Imperial engine. King, I'm just a kid, why do you want to enter a fighting stance? The little boy stopped quickly and looked at the king in front of him with sweat on his face. Well, it would be better for you to give up on me and find other heroes. No matter how much you act coquettishly to me, there's nothing you can do about it. The more you expect me, the more you will fall into despair. King had a gloomy face and stared at the little boy in front of him with bloodshot eyes. Such a scene immediately made Nami and others look puzzled. What, isn't this man called a hero by those people? Why didn't he rescue this little boy? Nami stuck her head out from behind Luochi, looked at King suspiciously and said. Perhaps King discovered something that we didn't discover. Zoro frowned and turned to look at Luochi. At this moment, the body of the little boy who was standing opposite King suddenly softened like a slime, and formed a pool of mud on the ground within a few seconds. What's going on here? The little boy turned into mud. Usopp looked shocked, but soon he jumped up excitedly and pointed at the king in the opposite screen and said. That's it, I understand. Based on the clip just now, this little boy must have transformed into a weirdo. And this king actually killed the weirdo just by relying on it. It's so awesome. He deserves to be the strongest man on earth. I have decided that I will choose this guy to be my heroic spirit template. Before finishing watching King's demonstration, Usopp couldn't help but raise his hand and press it on King's name. Luochi could only watch this scene happen. In this heroic spirit space, he can explain the power of each heroic spirit to Usopp and others. But we can't dare them to make a choice. At this time, Rossi couldn't help but regret not telling Usopp about King earlier. In this way, he would not have to choose King. Ding! Usopp made a choice and obtained the King template. He learned King's initial skills and can learn more heroic spirit template skills through training and becoming stronger. Note: consuming devil fruits for partners can speed up the progress of learning heroic spirit template skills, and even learn ultimate skills. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the King template and Robin Hood template, and learning all the skills of the Heroic Spirit template. Note: although the host can learn all the skills of the Heroic Spirit template, whether the host can use the skills depends on the host's own strength. Ding! The Heroic Spirit King is detected to be too weak, and temporary changes are being made. Changing. Changes completed. Heroic Spirit King. Skill 1. Emperor Engine. Beating the heart to make a loud sound, has the ability to make enemies fearful. After awakening, you can learn the domineering color of the king. Skill 2. Turn around and run with B button to sprint, the secret of King's escape. It can increase the movement speed when escaping. Mystery. Purgatory Unparalleled Explosive Heat Wave Cannon, releases huge energy from both hands and runs, possessing super power. Holy shit, is this okay? Can the Imperial Engine develop into Overlord Color Hockey? Doesn't this mean that Usopp may awaken his Overlord color in the future? Now that I have awakened my Overlord color, this thing is useless to me. Turn around and sprint using the B button. What the hell is this? Purgatory Unparalleled Explosive Heat Wave Cannon, isn't this a trick imagined by the people in the One Punch Man world for King? So, this is fantasy turned into a noble phantasm. Luo Chi's eyes widened, and it was hard to accept the sound of the system in his mind. However, Luo Chi felt relieved after thinking that in the Xingyu world, there were also some heroic spirit servants who also had some noble phantoms that were transformed from imagination. However, Mystery didn't summon Saitama. Are you worried that I will break this world? Rossi shook his head slightly and looked up at Usopp. Soon, the situation regarding Usopp's inheritance of King's power was revealed before his eyes. In addition to mastering the basic Emperor Engine and the escape skill, you haven't mastered anything else. It seems that in order for Usopp to gain actual combat capabilities, he still has to use Devil Fruit to strengthen him. Or wait until he has developed his strength to a certain level. Thinking of this, Luo Chi couldn't help but think of the bubble fruit and color fruit in the suitcase. The color fruit may be used to lure Ichiban Sanji, so he can't move for the time being. As for bubble fruit, hey, I don't know how Khalifa is doing in the capital of Seven Waters now. She would be very unhappy if she knew that I had defected from CP9. That's all, wait until you see her apologizing. I don't know if I can use the bubble fruit in the original work to get her forgiveness. Luo Chi shook his head and sighed in his heart. During the CP9 days, Khalifa helped him a lot. Luo Chi naturally kept this in mind. Luo Chi even felt that if he hadn't been promoted to CP0 and saw too many uncomfortable things there, he might even have worked at CP9 for the rest of his life because of Khalifa. Hey, Usopp, are you okay? Why have you been standing still since just now? Tell me, what kind of power have you obtained from the king? Luffy jumped in front of Usopp, staring enviously at Usopp's face. Power, ha ha ha, if there is any power, then he is simply a liar, a big liar. Usopp put his head in his hands and fell to his knees crying in pain. What's going on? Rossi, shouldn't Usopp be happy? Luffy scratched his face and looked at Rossi with confusion. It's up to you to see for yourselves. Luo Chi chuckled, silently thinking that the system had enabled replay permission. Soon, the picture of King, who originally disappeared because of Usopp's choice, reappeared. It's just that, as I guessed before, the current picture does not depict the powerful side of King, but rather the timid, fearful and deceitful side of King. Luffy and Zoro's eyes widened. They never thought that a man they thought was a strong man turned out to be just a man with false appearances. And this is the kind of man who clearly relied on his aura to scare a weirdo to death. This is really, it seems to be very enlightening. I didn't expect that one day I would see the wrong person. My practice is far from enough. Zoro shook his head and glanced at King with pity. After knowing King's strength, Sauron has identified King's heroic spirit panel as a waste panel. In other words, Usopp completely wasted an opportunity to become stronger. Ha ha ha, this King is really interesting. I was actually deceived. After Luffy came to his senses, he immediately held his stomach and laughed, completely ignoring Usopp's resentful eyes. Although King doesn't have much power, in the picture he takes the initiative to lead Elder Centipede to an uninhabited place. Also take the initiative to face those dangerous weirdos, although he may be just a simple liar at first. But at least he became a courageous man afterwards. A liar, a coward, and a courageous warrior. These are indeed the three attributes of King. Nami exhaled and sighed. For no reason, her mind suddenly imagined the scene of King coming in front of the dragon pirates and using the Emperor engine. Okay, Usopp, don't be too discouraged. Although the real King just now is not a powerful person. But he was able to muster up the courage to face danger. Can't you, Usopp, have the courage? Think about what your dreams are. Roche dispersed the heroic spirit space, pulled Usopp up from the ground, and said meaningfully. My dream. Usopp blinked. Yes, your dream. You go to sea, you should have something you want to pursue. If possible, I want to be a brave sea warrior. Usopp clenched his fists, thinking of the picture of King played by Roche after he chose the King template. Usopp's eyes gradually became firm. Since King can do it, I can definitely do it and become a brave warrior. Isn't it just a lie? I don't believe that the great Captain Usopp can't rely on the Emperor to deceive the Black Cat pirates. Usopp took a deep breath, and his heartbeat suddenly began to speed up. A drum-like, dong dong dong, sound began to sound, constantly spreading to the distance. What's the matter with this oppressive force? Don't I already know that the so-called Emperor engine is fake? Zoro frowned and looked at Luffy on the side, and got a nod from Luffy. Ah, are you still affected by the Emperor engine? Zoro's words also puzzled Usopp. He turned around and looked at Roche, wanting to get an answer from him. You were right, Usopp. You said that the Emperor engine you obtained is not simple. As long as you turn on the Emperor engine, the enemy will unconsciously feel some oppression. Unless that person's strength is much higher than yours, he will not be affected. In addition, the Emperor engine you obtained makes you eligible to turn on the Conqueror's Haki. Of course, whether you can turn it on depends on your acquired opportunities. As for what Conqueror's Haki is, you can roughly experience it. After Roche finished speaking, he directly turned on his Conqueror's Haki and enveloped Usopp. At the same time, a dong 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 sound sounded in Rock's heart, which was Rock's version of the Emperor engine. The dual effects of Conqueror's Haki and Emperor engine, even though Rosie has control, Usopp, Nami and others also feel a palpitation. Hee, Rosie is so strong, this momentum is more like Shanks. Luffy stroked his straw hat and said, this is the man with a bounty of 800 million berries. Zoro clenched his fists, and felt the gap between himself and Rosie more and more. The Conqueror's Haki seems to be stronger, and it is more comfortable to control. Single quote. It seems that my Emperor engine is still a little useful. Single quote. I wonder if the Emperor engine can help me develop the same Conqueror's Haki that can achieve the same observation and killing as red hair in the future. Single quote. Rosie breathed a sigh of relief, and when he felt that it was almost the same, he put away the Conqueror's Haki. Usopp, you just said that what you felt was the Conqueror's Haki. Most people will faint directly when they are hit by the peak Conqueror's Haki. What a domineering power. It is much more domineering than the simple Emperor engine. This will definitely scare the people of the Black Cat pirates. It's too early for you to get excited, Usopp. The Conqueror's Haki is not so easy to master. In addition, I have something else to tell you. Rosie, you can tell me. I can accept anything now. In fact, King's heroic spirit template has another secret move. Let me tell you, it is a very powerful move. Purgatory Warrior Heat Wave Cannon. Usopp pushed forward with both hands and roared majestically. Ah, what a powerful Purgatory Warrior Heat Wave Cannon, I'm dead. Luffy jumped back and fell to the ground with a painful look on his face. Seeing this scene, Zoro, who had calmed down, immediately had veins on his forehead. How long do you guys want to play? Don't we need to make some preparations to welcome the Black Cat pirates? Zoro bared his teeth and yelled at Luffy and Usopp who were playing around. Aren't we curious about the power of the Purgatory Warriors? Zoro, aren't you curious about the Purgatory Warriors? Roche just said that once the Purgatory Warriors are used, they can easily destroy a mountain. Luffy laughed, but Roche also said that the user needs to have a certain level of strength. Zoro snorted and said, Although he said so, it would be a lie to say that he is not curious. Vice Captain Roche, can't you really use your ability to demonstrate the Purgatory Warriors? At this time, Usopp came to Roche, his eyes full of expectations. Let's wait until later. It would be bad if we make a noise like him fighting here and attract Kuro's attention. Roche smiled and continued. It's almost time now. Luffy, Usopp, I'm going to the villa now to observe Kuro and protect Kaya. I'll leave it to you to monitor the movements of the other members of the Black Cat Pirates. Usopp, you must make good use of the explosive arrows I gave you earlier. I got them from a treasure hunter and modified them. You can try to use these explosive arrows in your own way. Hearing this, Usopp laughed and said, I know, Roche. Luffy didn't finish his words, but just nodded slightly. After receiving the responses from Usopp and Luffy, Rosie didn't stay any longer. He used some of Naomi's bows and arrows to directly perform the Navy 6 styles of shaving, and disappeared in front of everyone. His body turned into a shadow and quickly ran towards the villa at the highest point of the village. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.